Chapter 638. What the hell is that picture? In the square of B3 area, Shu Si raised his head high, puzzled and irritable. Not long ago, he was still moved by the love story of Zhang Shirlu and Aluo. Who would have thought that the story would come to an abrupt end? A man in black jumped out and said that the previous story was a hoax, and the truth was a disgusting tragedy that made people want to vomit last night's dinner. At that time, the whole square was filled with shouts that shook the sky, and the momentum was really impressive. And most of them were cursing and insulting the man in black. It was a very simple truth. If someone suddenly jumped out and tried to overthrow that person's perception without any hard evidence, being scolded was inevitable. Although the man in black came up with a subversive story, there was no hard evidence to support that story. Of course, on the other hand, Wang Lu also had no evidence to prove that the story of those crosstalk actors was true. However, did this world need so much evidence? Everyone was busy in the city of immortals, each pursuing their own ideals. The life of this group of crosstalk actors was a kind of entertainment just for fun. Who cared about whether it was true or false? As for Shu Si, he didn't care at all which of the two stories was true. For him, it didn't matter whether Zhang Shirlu was born for love, or the shovel crosstalk actor Zhang Shirlu was born for love. Which one was more interesting, he was more willing to support. In comparison, of course, Zhang Shirlu, who was born for love, was more interesting. Therefore, Shu Si also hated the man in black for interrupting the story, which caused him to be unable to see the life and death separation of Zhang Shirlu and Aluo. However, before everyone could scold the man in black enough, they saw that the picture in the signboard on the square changed. More than 200 people entered the arena from two directions, and then the world collapsed and returned to the void. In the void, he too and the black-robed man exchanged their hands and formed a 9 regions map that combined the heaven and the earth. Shu Si had never heard of the famous 9 regions map, nor could he understand the mysterious means of a peak supreme and an ancient earth immortal. He could only look at them in bewilderment. It was said that the scene just now was a blood oath, but he didn't see anyone shed blood, so how could the oath be made? Or could it be that the great cultivators no longer had red blood flowing in their veins? Humph, you ignorant fool, you don't even recognize the 9 provinces map? Shu Si subconsciously replied. Why should I know what the 9 regions map is? Ah, Deadface, why is it you? Halfway through his words, the little mouse recognized that the voice behind him was his current boss, Deadface. He was so shocked that his soul almost flew out. To be honest, this dead-faced man was not a bad person. He had always been very good to him, but once he made a mistake, his punishment was merciless. This time he was caught slacking off, so he would at least be scolded. However, unexpectedly, Deadface didn't seem to notice that Shu Si was being lazy at this time. Instead, he explained with a sinking voice, 9 regions map is the most valuable treasure of Shangjing sect, which reflects the ambition of Shangjing sect to rule the 9 regions. The design idea of the 9 regions map is to treat the 9 regions as a complete magical treasure, and then refine a central magical treasure that can control this magical treasure. Hearing this, Shu Si couldn't believe it. Control the entire 9 regions? Shangjing sect people were really ambitious. Now that Supreme he too has the 9 regions map, could it be that the 9 regions is already in the palm of his hand? Shangjing sect people are ambitious, and they have been so for thousands of years, Deadface said, and then shook his head. However, wanting to refine the entire 9 regions into their own magical treasure is just a fantasy of Shangjing sect people. Supreme he too's cultivation base is unprecedented, and he also has the support of Shangjing sect people's thousands of years of 9 regions strategy. However, this 9 regions map is still in its embryonic form. It can barely sense the changes in the situation on the 9 regions, but it is extremely difficult to exert a direct influence on the 9 regions. However, being able to see the world with one map is enough to be called a top-quality immortal treasure. Shu Si asked, then what's the matter with this immortal treasure now? Why did it become a blood oath? It's very simple. Today's 9 regions map is used as a carrier. The elders of the Wanxian League side took out a part of their primordial spirit and entrusted it to the 9 regions map. The same is true for the Dixian side. They extracted a bit of their immortal spirit and entrusted it to the 9 regions map. This is like a common hostage for both sides. The contract based on this is more effective than any oath, so it's called a blood oath. In fact, apart from this blood oath, There is no other means that can restrain so many top cultivators at the same time. Shu Si seemed to understand and asked, I heard that there's a big demon heart oath. The big demon heart oath can be avoided. The Wanxian League side alone has a successful precedent. It's the red and white boy who gave you the compass. When he condensed the king pill, he swallowed the big demon heart oath. And at the level of Dixian, a bit of immortal spirit is enough to break the entanglement of the demon heart, so the big demon heart oath is basically a joke to them. Very well, then what's going to happen next? Next, with the progress of the grand competition, the two sides will divide the primordial spirit and immortal spirit in the 9 regions map, according to the points obtained from the victory. When the division is finished, the grand competition can be over. What? Divide the primordial spirit and immortal spirit? I heard that if the primordial spirit or immortal spirit is in the hands of others, they will never be free. Yes, this grand competition is used to determine the dominance of the future, and the dominance of the future is always people. As long as people are controlled, the future is naturally controlled. If all the high-level cultivators of the Wanxian League fall into the hands of the Dixian, how could there be a chance for the Wanxian League to make a voice in the future? And vice versa. Shu Si seemed to understand and said, so that's how it is. But don't you think it's strange? I heard people say that this grand competition is ultimately for the common fight against the fallen immortal. But now, everyone has put their primordial spirit and immortal spirit on the map. If something happens to this 9 regions map, wouldn't it be the end of the world? Oh, you're right, so we sincerely pray that there will be no problem with the 9 regions map. Once the world is in chaos, people like you and I will be no different from ants. With that, the dead face faintly sighed, which made Shu Si suddenly feel cold and his whole body trembled. Other things about this dead face were fine, but this cold aura was really unbearable. Usually, Shu Si didn't want to stay in his room and often sneaked out, which was more or less related to this. At this time, he only felt the chill in front of him. The dead face slightly raised his head, as if immersed in some old memories, and a wave of gloomy fluctuation came. Shu Si couldn't bear it, so he planned to take the opportunity to slip away and go to other areas. However, as soon as he moved, the change in the signboard above his head made him stop. Because the first battle of the grand competition actually came faster than anyone expected. The blood oath had just been made, and the opening battle had already come. The two sides in the opening battle were He Tu and Xianmo. Needless to say, after He Tu showed his magical ability to suppress the immortal spirit, his reputation among the cultivators had undoubtedly become the #1 person in 9 regions. It was best for him to open the prelude to the battle. Whether the 9 regions side could get a good start or not depended on him. However, the other side was somewhat unexpected. After making the blood oath, the man in black quietly escaped and pushed the leader, Xianmo, to the front of the stage. Although Xianmo looked a little helpless, he still resolutely took up the heavy responsibility. The battlefield was set in the central fighting arena of Immortal 1 area. Above the infinitely high sky, the 9 regions map of Supreme He Tu was like a star overlooking the earth, waiting for the winner's blessing. At this time, the fighting arena still maintained the dark void, and the natural scenery such as mountains and rivers had not been restored. Because for this level of battle, the general terrain was difficult to have a substantial effect. Even the spirit vein that was stuffed in it was difficult to compete with the 2 peak-level cultivators. It was better to clean up everything and leave an empty field for them to play freely. And the supreme-level battle was indeed not disappointing. Yin and Yang divide. Without any greetings, without any extra action. After Xianmo entered the arena, he directly cast an earth-shattering great immortal technique. Yin and Yang divide. According to legend, in the endless past, the whole world was a piece of chaos and void. There was no distinction between heaven and earth, yin and yang. A sage born in the chaos divided the chaos, so that the clear air rose and the turbid air fell. Only then did the yin and yang of heaven and earth come into being. This was also the reason why the present 9 regions could exist. And Xianmo wanted to reproduce the magnificent miracle of the ancient sage. With one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground, the dark void was abruptly torn apart, divided into 2 layers of yin and yang. Outside the arena, the cultivators of the Wanxian League who witnessed this scene held their breath. This was the first time they had witnessed a Dixian go all out to display an immortal technique. It was completely different from the King Pill level negation immortal technique that Bai Zhe used against Wang Wu a few months ago. What was displayed by Xian Mo was comparable to the divine skill of the creation of heaven and earth. In the existing theoretical system, this was the most lethal technique that people could imagine. According to the existing theoretical system of immortal cultivation in 9 regions, it was generally believed that yin and yang composed everything in the world. In other words, no matter what thing or person, once it was separated by yin and yang, it would cease to exist and fall apart from its structure. Unless one could be detached from the world, no one could be spared. However, that was already the realm of transcending the tribulation and ascending, which was something that could only be seen but not reached. For the cultivators of the Wanxian League in the current stage, this was already a fatal situation. Senior brother sect leader. Several Shangjing sect elders who were closest to the scene could not help but exclaim. No one could have imagined that the seemingly friendly and gentle, and even somewhat weak Dixian Xian Mo, could have such power when she made her move. And how could Hichu Daoren, who was in the middle of it, be spared? The next moment, with a muffled groan, Hichu Doran's body was cut from the waist and divided into 2 pieces. However, just when countless people were shocked by this scene, Xian Mo let out a soft cry. The body was broken in the middle. This was not the result that the yin and yang division technique should achieve. After being hit by this technique, the whole person's existence should disintegrate, and then turn into yin and yang and be assimilated by the world. If it was only broken in the middle, did it mean that Hichu Doran's upper body was yang and lower body was yin, a natural-born yin and yang person? However, the next moment Xian Mo had already seen the answer. Shi. Worthy to be the number 1 person in 9 regions, I deeply admire you. Right in front of Xian Mo, there was a young man in white and a young girl in black. The 2 of them were separated from the yin and yang worlds and stared at her with a solemn face. What a good yin and yang incarnation. Chapter 639. What the F***ck? Who are these 2 people? Is the original body of Supreme He2 actually a 2-person rotation? Moreover, it's a man and a woman. So, the true gender of Supreme He2 should actually be yin and yang person? F***ck off. Your mother is the yin and yang person. F***ck, you people from Shangjing sect can do it, but we can't say it? Look at it yourself, isn't that a man and a woman? Inside and outside the city of immortals, people who saw the situation in the arena through various channels fell into great shock. The mystery of Xian Mo's great immortal technique yin and yang division might not be clearly seen by everyone. However, Hichu Doran's upper and lower body were divided into 2 parts, which was obvious to all. It was not uncommon for cultivators to have an incarnation technique, but it was quite rare to see a man and a woman with different genders. After all, each incarnation came from the same source. If a man could have 2 kinds of avatars, didn't it mean that there was a female component in the source? This kind of situation was not unheard of, but when it fell on the head of the number 1 person in 9 regions, it was inevitably shocking. Could it be that under the serious face of Hichu Daoren, there was a woman's delicate heart? However, unlike the dumbfounded audience outside the arena, Xian Mo, as a Dixian, understood the significance of Hichu Doran's yin and yang incarnation. Of course, he too was not a yin and yang combination, or a delicate mind, but he had begun to transcend the human level and set foot in a higher realm. The definition and concept of male, female, and gender were only valid for the individual. In a group, gender was meaningless. For example, in a village of 100 households, half male and half female, was the village male or female? And he too began to break away from the individual category and sublimated himself into a group. Therefore, after the yin and yang division, there would be 2 complete men and women. The male was strong and firm, symbolizing the pure and untainted masculinity, while the female was soft and yin, like a fish in the water in the chaotic world. Is this your path? He too's incarnation that was separated into the yin and yang realms didn't answer, but he didn't need to. At the peak of the unity stage, half a step away from the Mahayana realm, every move and word contained his own unique Tao. As for the Dixian Xian Mo, who was half a level higher, he could completely understand this kind of Tao. For a moment Xian Mo was stunned, but he was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he said softly, People in the mountains are immortals. Since ancient times, the transcendence of the path of immortals has always been the result of comprehending the Tao of heaven and earth, and then ascending to immortality. During this period of time, they would personally distance themselves from human affairs. Therefore, it is often said that immortals do not eat the food of mortals. Yet, you're doing the opposite, using the path of all living beings to prove the great Tao. No wonder you're only at the pinnacle of the body integration stage, half-step Mahayana with your strength. You've already given up on the ordinary immortal Tao. Although his voice was not loud, it was like a clap of thunder in spring, causing countless people inside and outside the arena to be stunned. Supreme Hichu had already given up on the ordinary immortal Tao? He was the #1 immortal cultivator in 9 regions. If even he had given up on the immortal Tao, didn't that mean that there was a serious defect in the immortal cultivation of modern people? After the age of chaos for thousands of years, there were countless capable people in 9 regions, but none of them were able to break through the last hurdle and ascend to immortality. Many people's immortal heart was filled with shock, especially those who had stepped into the body integration stage and had been diligently cultivating for the Mahayana stage and the heavenly tribulation to ascend to immortality. They were even more shocked. Only the several elders of the Lingjian school were slightly startled after hearing this. A certain lazy-looking master of non-face peak, after hearing this, his eyes flashed, the corner of his mouth hooked up into a smile, and then he nodded slightly. Unexpectedly, the brain of that old bureaucrat is not dead yet. On the other side, in the center of the whirlpool, he too had to open his mouth. This has nothing to do with the immortal Tao. The young man in the Yang realm said, I am the sect leader of Shangjing sect, the leader of the Wanxian League. Therefore, it is not my way to be good alone. Upon hearing this, Xianmo was startled again. You can't be good alone? A moment later, Xianmo sighed. As the leader of hundreds of millions of people, I must shoulder the mission and responsibility for these hundreds of millions of people. So, no matter how good the way to be good alone is, it's not good enough. That's why I chose such a way. So that's how it is. You chose to refine the 9 regions map, this kind of immortal treasure, because of this consideration. The 2 incarnations of He too nodded, and then no longer spoke. Each of them operated their own power, ready to fight with Dixian in this yin and yang realm. However, Xianmo suddenly raised her hand. I didn't expect that after more than 10,000 years, there would still be people like you in 9 regions. In order to express my respect, I will give this game to you. After saying that, Xianmo's figure slowly disappeared from the arena. After she left, the yin and yang boundary in the arena also disappeared. The clear and turbid qi began to mix again. But it didn't return to chaos. Instead, it gave birth to the sun, moon, stars, mountains, and rivers. In the blink of an eye, the arena returned to the original green mountains. In a short period of time, the arena experienced a small chaos creation, but the overall structure was not chaotic at all, and there was no sign of collapse at all. This also made the spectators deeply sigh with Dixian's means. Xianmo's yin and yang division was already beyond imagination, but now it seemed that the person who built this arena was even more brilliant. However, what was more worth sighing with emotion was Dixian's temperament. What did she just say? She gave this game to us? Did she admit defeat? On the rostrum, the red-robed ancestor was extremely surprised. Just because Brother He too is serious and responsible, she admitted defeat? Isn't this too much of a child's play? On the side, Supreme Tianluan chuckled and said, I'm afraid things are not that simple. There are other inside stories that we can't know. Let's wait and see for the time being. It's not a bad thing to win the first battle. The red-robed ancestor froze for a moment and then turned his eyes to the side. He saw that Dixian's side was also tangled, but they didn't seem to be surprised by this. Obviously, they had expected that Xianmo might choose to give up and admit defeat. Oh, Brother Tianluan, unexpectedly, as the leader of a famous bookworm sect, you're actually very sophisticated. Supreme Tianluan smiled again, and there was a bit of pride in his smile as he said, the so-called human relationship, when deconstructed in detail, is nothing more than calculation and choice. As long as you refer to the various states of the world, make thousands of sets of formulas, and compare all the possible situations one by one, you can do whatever you want. Moreover, according to the needs, you can freely switch between various forms, temperament, and experience. If you want to be sophisticated in human relationships, you can also be full of vigor. This is a set of method that I was able to master 50 years ago. Unfortunately, one must have a supreme level primordial spirit to be able to master this set of method flawlessly. Otherwise, I would have popularized it a long time ago, so that the world wouldn't laugh at my 10,000 art sect people for not understanding human relationships. Upon hearing this, the red-robed ancestor clicked his tongue. You 10,000 art sect people are really monsters. Supreme Tianluan said. Immortal cultivation has always been like this. Although the main path is unified until the day of ascension, the immortal path is like a tree. At the beginning there's not much difference, but the more it grows and extends, the farther the branches and leaves are. When the immortal path reaches its peak, it has long been far from the so-called normal state of the world. The so-called monster is nothing more than a stage that is too high to be understood by the world. The red-robed ancestor chuckled. Your 10,000 art sect has always been like this since 10,000 years ago, refusing to admit that you're just a bookworm. However, when it comes to you, you're actually able to create a set of human relationship method that has never been done before. It's really rare. Red-robed Taoist friend, if you're interested, we might as well exchange pointers some other day. The two chatted happily and gradually forgot about the outcome of the match. Although the outcome of Hichu Doran's first match was important, it was not enough for the two Supremes to worry about it. On the other side, the Dixie and Doran had different expressions. Xianmo walked from the arena to the rostrum and apologetically said, I'm sorry, I lost the first match. But I really can't do anything to him. At this moment, even the most harsh Baizé didn't speak, but just silently turned his back. The one who had the best friendship with Xianmo, Dixie and Doran, came over and patted her on the shoulder. We all understand. If it were me, I would also abstain. After all, it's too similar. Baizé coldly snorted. Similar my ass. With that, he turned around and walked away. The victory in the first battle should have been great news for the union of 10,000 immortals. Although the points gained from a victory were negligible compared to the entire competition schedule, as the first match, the symbolic meaning was much more important. In the battle between the Supremes and the Dixie and Doran, Dixian basically had no strength restriction. In other words, the victory of Hichu meant that the gap between the peak strength of the Wanxian League cultivators and the Dixie and Doran might not be as far as people thought. However, those who had witnessed the battle with their own eyes could not feel happy. The gap was not that far? Perhaps. As the number one person in 9 regions, it was not surprising that Supreme Hichu had a powerful trump card. Over the years, those who had been in contact with him had guessed that his strength was far stronger than it looked. But that was Hichu. So what if it was someone else? In the face of the world-splitting yin and yang division, how many people could guarantee that they could withstand it? At least, when Xianmo used this immortal technique, many of the Supremes who witnessed it from the sidelines changed their complexion. For example, the famous mad dog from Shangjing sect, Supreme Tianyu. At the moment of yin and yang division, he was stunned and his body went stiff. Obviously, he absolutely could not withstand that move. And among the Supremes, Tianyu was famous for his actual combat ability. After doing all kinds of dirty work in Shangjing sect, his actual fighting strength was absolutely not a disgrace to the name of Supreme. Even he was like this, let alone the others. Let alone after dealing with the Dixie and Doran for so long, they more or less knew that Xianmo's strength was far from the top among the Dixie and Doran. In this match, the other side handed over the victory. If they didn't, what would the result be? Sure enough, trying to win in the high-level fight was as difficult as ascending to the sky. It was the right choice to put the strategic focus on the fight between King Pil and Yuanying stage. However, had the King Pil and Yuanying stage who were still in training made enough progress? Thinking of this, there were many people who were worried. However, at this time on the rostrum, a lazy voice spread throughout the city of immortals through the equipment in the venue. I've witnessed a wonderful fight. My emerald green bamboo sword is simply unbearably hungry. I wonder if you can add a plug so that I can solve this hunger problem first? With that, a woman in white stood up. In one step, she crossed the boundary between the rostrum and the arena and stood in the middle of the venue. She held a bamboo stick in her hand. This time it didn't even have the shape of a sword but a stick. And such a unique weapon naturally couldn't belong to anyone else. Wanxian League Lingjian School, Master of Non-Phase Peak Wang Wu. Please enlighten me. Holding the sword, Wang Wu was no longer as lazy as before. Although the weapon in her hand didn't have the shape of a sword, the king pill was spinning in her eyes, and the sword intent was awe-inspiring. Ah, the first day of the weekend has passed just like this. I'm so happy. Please pay attention to the WeChat public platform, search for His Majesty the King. Thank you everyone. Chapter 640. Wang Wu. After the woman in white stepped onto the stage, many people uttered a surprised voice. What does she want to do? Who let her go up there? She's just a little king pill. Why does she want to be in the limelight at this time? However, after a moment of doubt, there was more support. T brother, don't talk nonsense. If others hear it, we will all be implicated by you. She's not only the Taoist king pill, but also the popular idol Murong who has swept 9 regions. She has a lot of fans, many of whom are supreme-level powerhouses. It's easy for her to crush us. Tisk, I'm telling the truth. Even if it's in front of a supreme, it would still be the same. She's just a little king pill. How could she act so recklessly? Little king pill? You two idiots, do you really think that she got her fame by virtue of her face? The title of the #1 king pill in 9 regions is much earlier than that Murong. If she's still a little king pill, then there's no king pill in 9 regions to look at. You guys have eyes but don't recognize her. This grand competition is held because of her. When the Wanxian League handed over the plan of the grand competition to Dixian for the first time, if there was no Wang Wu's victory, Dixian would not have accepted it at all. And the battle where Wang Wu crushed Bai Zhe of Dixian with a near-absolute advantage completely established her reputation as the #1 king pill in 9 regions. At present, the 3 major evaluation halls in 9 regions have listed her as 100 people below supreme level, which is comparable to peak deity stage. As far as I know, in the king pill level event of this grand competition, she is the absolute leader no matter how she is ranked. If you think you have the qualification to underestimate her, you might as well find an opportunity to fight her. It is said that with her temper, it's not easy to fight her. As long as you open your mouth to bet 10,000 spirit stones, she will definitely put down everything in her hands to fight you. Peak deity stage? Impossible. She was just a Taoist king pill. Even if she could challenge someone at a higher level, it didn't make sense for her to jump 2 levels at once. Also, if he really is an expert at the peak of the soul formation stage, why would he lower his status for 10,000 spirit stones? Perhaps it's a peculiar hobby of a capable person. Moreover, I heard that the mysterious Sky Mansion once found someone to roughly calculate Wang Wu's income. Because she haggles over every penny, her ability to make money is quite good. If you calculate her income in recent decades, she can become a famous tycoon in the entire Wanxian League. But I've always heard that she's poor. Could it be that her spending power is especially strong? Compared to her income, her extravagant spending is nothing. That's why it's said that it's a strange hobby of capable people. They should be very rich, but they still look like they're in poverty. Probably because he enjoys the taste of poverty. As expected, the capable people in the Wanxian League are mostly freaks. While the audience was arguing, Wang Wu was already a little impatient. Because after she entered the arena for a full quarter of an hour, no one from the Dixian side stood up to fight with her. They just looked at the arena with bewildered and uncertain eyes. Wang Wu also stopped her initial posture and stabbed the bamboo stick on the ground. Is there anyone who wants to fight? The dignified Dixian shouldn't be so indecisive, right? If you think you have no chance of winning against me, there's no harm in giving me another round. The discussion among the Dixian people on the rostrum suddenly became louder. Giving him another round? That would be a joke. Xian Mo cupped her hands and gave the first victory to He Tu, which was understandable. After all, He Tu's Tao of all beings had shaken everyone's hearts. However, surrendering with cupped hands was not something that could be repeated. How could a person who could stand up against the immortals in the upper realm more than 10,000 years ago admit defeat so easily? On the contrary, they had to win the second round. They had to make up for the impact of the first round's loss. Previously, they hesitated not because they were worried about Wang Wu's almost invincible strength in the King Pill realm. Instead, they were discussing whether this sudden challenge would disrupt the competition schedule and make many of the arranged matches unable to go smoothly. However, now that they were provoked like this, there was no reason not to respond. Otherwise, the people from the Wanxian League would really think that the Dixian were afraid of them. Therefore, not long after, a figure flashed on the arena. Someone had already accepted Wang Wu's challenge. "Hey, why is it still you?" Wang Wu was a bit surprised to see Bai Zhe. The defeated opponent in the past had a cold and solemn face, dressed in plain clothes, and was no longer surrounded by the gorgeous immortal treasure negation golden seal. His temperament seemed to be a lot calmer. After meeting, Bai Zhe no longer said anything but coldly said, "The shame of the past will be returned 100-fold today." Wang Wu could not help but laugh. 100-fold? Losing once is not enough. Do you want to lose 100 times? If you are willing to repeat the score, I don't care. The victory points of this grand competition are still very valuable in the mysterious Sky Mansion. Bai Zhe coldly humphed and said, "Empty talk." With that, he no longer talked nonsense. As soon as he raised his hand, the sky was torn and starlight fell from the sky. "Hey, you're suspected of cheating, right?" As soon as Wang Wu saw this scene, she was shocked. Tearing the sky with bare hands and summoning the light of millions of stars, although not as powerful as Xian Mo's yin and yang divide heaven and earth, it was far beyond the scope of Taoist Master King Pill, right? "Oh, why would I need to cheat to deal with ants like you? I'm just a little more serious." With that, Bai Zhe suddenly closed his right hand. In an instant, tens of thousands of stars surged from the crack in the sky, like the billowing waves of the Yangtze River. The momentum was majestic, but the speed was as fast as lightning. In just a moment, the light of the stars fell from above to the ground, and in an instant, the place where Wang Wu stood was engulfed. A moment later, the light receded, leaving behind a bottomless circular pit. In the dark pit, twisted and flickering light could be vaguely seen, which was the embers of the starlight. It was just that there was no longer the shadow of Wang Wu. There was a dead silence in the arena. This change came so fast that it seemed that the outcome had already been decided before the attention of many spectators outside the arena could be gathered. Many people opened their mouths wide and looked at the pit in disbelief. What happened just now? Wait a minute, this is definitely cheating, right? Didn't they say that Dixian would suppress his own stage in the fight? But how could this be the strength of King Pill's stage? Yes, these Dixian are too shameless. Calm down, things are not that simple. Although it looks incredible, if it's cheating, there's no reason for Supreme He 2 and the others not to say anything. There must be some inside story. Inside story? What other inside story could there be? It's such an obvious cheating. Cheating. As if hearing the doubts outside the arena, Bai Zhe sneered. And then his voice was transmitted through thousands of broadcasting props inside and outside the City of Immortals. It has always been difficult for narrow-sighted ants to understand things beyond their realm. So, I'll explain it in a way that you can understand. What makes you think that we, the dignified Dixian, could lose to you in the same stage? Based on your half-baked method and unsightly way of using power? Your chance of winning is nothing more than that we are not adapted to this kind of suppressed stage fight and can't grasp the right amount of effort. But, how difficult do you think it is for Dixian to adapt to these little things? Bai Zhe said and then paced around the arena. There are countless capable people in 9 regions. Among you, there are indeed many people with impressive strength, such as the number 1 King Pill in 9 regions. With that, Bai Zhe pointed to the pit under his feet. In terms of defense, it is indeed far beyond the level of King Pill in the general sense. Her method and cultivation method are eye-opening. However, as long as we have seen it once with our ability, how difficult would it be to deduce and create a better method? Few these weak people can do it, why can't we do it? With that, Bai Zhe stopped, closed his eyes and pursed his lips. His right hand hung on the side of his body. His palm opened and closed as if he was recalling the feeling of controlling the stars. At the same time, outside the arena there was a dead silence. What Bai Zhe said just now was like a heavy hammer that fell on people's heart. Few these weak people can do it, why can't we do it? Since Wang Wu could create non-phase method, then why couldn't she create a more powerful method with the means of the ancient Earth Immortals? Such a simple truth, why didn't we ever think of it? Previously, Everyone only sighed at the power of the number 1 king pill in 9 regions, and rejoiced at her temporary victory. However, they didn't think that when the Wanxian League was in full swing, how could the Dixian people be idle? And once the Dixian people got serious, how could the current Wanxian League have even half a chance of winning? The more people thought about it, the heavier their hearts became, as if there was a mountain pressing on their chest. Even the faces of the several supremes on the rostrum were unusually ugly. Until another person's voice came from the arena. It was the voice of Wang Wu. Well said, but you're not Bai Zhe, are you? At the same time, Bai Zhe suddenly opened his eyes, opened his left hand, and clenched it forward, as if to lock someone's throat. Whoosh! The palm broke the air, making a harsh explosion. The 5 fingers closed. Although the movement was small, it could press out an overwhelming wave of air. However, when he clenched his fist, there was not what he wanted in his palm, only a green bamboo stick that suddenly appeared. The stick was crystal clear and had a strong magical power flowing around it. That palm that could destroy gold and stone could not break this bamboo stick. And on the back of his neck, there was a slender and gentle hand. Then that hand suddenly clenched. It was the same overwhelming wave of air, and the strong grip was exactly the same as that of Bai Zhe. However, this clenching of his hand was also futile, because the moment the palm clenched, Bai Zhe's figure instantly shrank by 1/3. The man who was originally half a head taller than Wang Wu became a child whose height only reached her chest and abdomen. The child had a smile on his face, his 2 eyes curved into a crescent moon, and in his hand, a curved dagger was stabbed behind him. Puff! The muffled sound of the dagger stabbing into the flesh came. Wang Wu's indestructible non-phase method could not resist the dagger's edge. However, Wang Wu, who was stabbed, turned into the bamboo stick in her hand, and the original bamboo stick turned into the enchanting figure of a woman in white. The woman's finger was like a blade, slightly curved, like a curved dagger, and directly stabbed the forehead of the smiling child. Crash! Like broken glass, the child's body turned into pieces. And 100 feet away, a small tree swayed slightly and turned into a person. It was the smiling child. What a powerful intuition. Did you see that I was fake from the beginning? Continue to follow the WeChat public platform. Search for His Majesty the King. Thank you everyone. Chapter 641. In the fighting arena, the change could be described as rapid as the hare rising and the falcon descending. After Witzard said a string of despairing words, the sudden change dazzled everyone's eyes. Wang Wu, who was supposed to die under the falling stars, miraculously came back from the dead, and fought a series of ridiculously fast offensive and defensive battles with her opponent. Not to mention the King Pill-level audience. Many Taoist masters of Yuanying stage also felt their vision blurred. When they could see clearly, the 2 of them had already had a short truce and were talking to each other hundreds of feet away. Did you see that I was fake from the beginning? Wang Wu stretched out her foot to kick the bamboo stick on the ground and held it in the air while saying, "Of course I couldn't see it. At first, I thought that the idiot Bai Zhe was finally enlightened and was willing to throw away the flashy but impractical negation golden seal, and use a more solid method to fight me. But TSK, what came was a series of illusion." The smile of the opposite child was even more brilliant. "So, you didn't see my real body at the beginning? Then how did you block my illusion when you didn't guard against it in advance?" Wang Wu sighed. "It's very simple, you've played with it." The child was somewhat puzzled. "Played with it? My illusion should be perfect for you at your current stage." "Yes, your illusion is indeed exquisite. Relying on my non-phase method's mind-cleansing effect alone, I can't see the flaws of your illusion intuitively. However, the effect of your illusion is too exaggerated, which makes people instinctively resist believing it." Too exaggerated? Yes, how could there be a King Pill-level cultivator whose attack power is stronger than my defense? This is simply impossible. Wang Wu shrugged her shoulders with a, "How could you be so stupid?" smile. Even though the child's smile was almost instinctive at this moment, he couldn't smile anymore. "Is this your reason? Is it not enough? If one day you see the sun rising from the west, won't you doubt the authenticity of this world? For you, is non-phase method so indestructible?" Wang Wu said, "You can try." "So that's how it is. I didn't know that your belief was so strong." That's why the illusion failed and you saw through the flaw. The child shook his head. It's the first time I've seen someone like you. Wang Wu said, actually, it's not that fast. At first, I thought that Bai Zhe had changed tactics and abandoned the flashy negation immortal technique. It wasn't until I heard your nonsense that I realized that you weren't Bai Zhe himself. If it was any other idiot who saw me being destroyed by the starlight, he would have laughed to the heavens and said that he was invincible. How could he have the intelligence to come up with a lie to hurt people's hearts? Using the opportunity of the competition to attack the Wanxian League's mind, this is not Bai Zhe's style. The smiling child asked, that's not a psychological attack. I'm just telling the truth. In this grand competition you guys have no chance of winning. Including your match, I've already grasped the victory in my hands. With that, he stretched out his hands and flapped them slowly like wings. Every slight tremble left an afterimage that would not fade away. After a while, thousands of arms had accumulated. What is he doing? Outside the arena, many people had doubts in their hearts. At present, the opponent was a childlike illusion master. Just now, his illusion almost deceived everyone. Even those supremes did not see the flaw, which was simply incredible. Of course, the most important reason for this was that the flow of the surrounding spiritual energy was isolated from the inside and outside of the arena, which led to the audience could only rely on vision and experience to judge the situation in the arena. And based on vision alone, the illusion of the child was flawless. However, no matter how perfect the illusion was, it was still an illusion. Seeing that Wang Wu's confidence in herself was so strong that she could ignore the illusion, what else could the child play? What kind of prelude was this thousand hands gesture? The next moment the answer was revealed. More and more arms appeared around the child. The surrounding spiritual energy also shook violently, dark clouds gathered above his head, and lightning flashed. However, at this moment, the tip of a dagger suddenly appeared in front of Wang Wu's chest, and a beautiful blood-stained flower quickly bloomed around it. The supposedly flawless non-phase sword defense was broken before it could even be displayed. However, compared with the sharpness of this dagger, its ghostly appearance was even more amazing. There was no person holding the dagger, and there was no trace of magical power fluctuation, but the dagger just appeared without any reason. Of course, this was also thanks to the boy's thousand hands posture, which successfully attracted everyone's attention. When everyone thought that the thundercloud in the sky was the killer move, the dagger that could pierce through the non-phase method had silently stabbed the opponent's body. However, this dagger was just the beginning. On the snow-white dress, one could only see the red flower of blood blooming. One by one, the dagger pierced through the body, revealing the surface of the body. In an instant, the curved dagger had turned into thousands of illusions, like a storm. Just when Wang Wu's body was about to be torn apart by the violent stabbing, she saw a burst of distortion. Impressively, it turned into an emerald green bamboo stick. And Wang Wu herself had quietly appeared behind the thousand hands boy and pressed her palm on his head. The same thousand cuts reappeared on the boy's body, and his body, which was much smaller than Wang Wu's, could not withstand such pressure at all. Like a watermelon being smashed by a heavy hammer, the ground was covered with dark red. In the blood, the child slowly condensed into the shape of his original body, but there was a bit of confusion on his face. The next moment he stretched out his right hand and moved his 5 fingers. Instantly, the earth trembled like the surface of water. Then, all the rocks shattered into sand, and everything within a radius of 50 miles sank into the ground. This spell wasn't launched quickly, but Wang Wu didn't dodge it and was directly buried in the soft sand. A moment later, an emerald green bamboo pierced straight out from the bottom of the infinitely deep sand hole. At the same time, Wang Wu appeared in front of the child like a ghost, and her slender white hands wrapped in yellow sand. Enough! The child roared and flew backward, pulling away from his opponent. You dare to use illusion to counter me? Wang Wu curled her lips. Huh, you actually saw through it so quickly? I was going to play with you for a while. As she spoke, her figure began to become erratic, and there were also thousands of arms on her back, exactly the same as the child. At this moment, countless people inside and outside the field fell into shock again. My goodness! He actually dares to use illusion against Mirage Boy? On the Dixian side of the rostrum, a young girl who looked no more than 20 years old stood up and looked at the field incredulously. As a close friend of the smiling child, she couldn't be more familiar with him. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that his illusion was superb. In the complete Dixian realm, it wasn't an exaggeration to describe his supernatural power. In the peak state, his illusion could forcibly distort the boundary between reality and illusion, and a word could even loosen the great Tao of heaven and earth. Such an amazing illusion, half of it came from the inheritance of the ancient immortal world, and the other half came from the special bloodline in his body. Although Mirage Boy looked like a pink child, his essence was mostly a non-human creature, close to an immortal beast. In theory, even if he were to lower his cultivation, no one in the same realm would be able to resist the erosion of this natural illusionary master. Mirage Boy was the trump card of the Dixian side. They had previously carefully analyzed the fight between Bai Zhe and Wang Wu and determined that it was difficult to win the head-on fight against that barbarian woman. Therefore they sent Mirage Boy. Who would have thought that? Wang Wu actually went against the heaven's will, and could use illusion against Mirage Boy. Fellow Taoist Feng Yin, isn't your Lingjian school hiding too deep? Not to mention that kid Wang Lu, this master of non-phase peak really hides her ability. Previously, she was able to obtain the title of the #1 King Pill in 9 regions because of her inconceivable non-phase method. Unexpectedly, after all these years, her non-phase method has become more and more refined, and she also cultivates illusion. When it came to this, the red-robed old man sighed with regret. Such talent is really rare in the world. Unfortunately, her natural spirit root is not good, and she has no chance to break through to Yuanying stage. Otherwise, if she could have the stage of the other elders of your heavenly sword hall, at this time I'm afraid it would not be your turn to be the sect leader. Upon hearing this, Feng Yin just shook his head and smiled bitterly. After a moment he said, how could she know any illusion technique? This is nothing more than the nameless non-phase sword. Nameless sword? Is that the sword technique that can return the damage? The red-robed old man asked. She can even bounce back illusion technique? Feng Yin explained, although it's an illusion technique, it's essentially nothing more than a change in energy. With her swordsmanship, it's not difficult for her to bounce back. These words sounded simple, but when it fell into the ears of the experts, they were even more amazed. It's essentially nothing more than a change in energy? Yes, that's right. But even great immortal techniques like Yin and Yang division and Immortal T, weren't they essentially energy changes? If any energy changes could be bounced back, then Wang Wu would really be invincible in the world. It seems that we've won this battle again. On the side of Dixian, the Mirage Boy's best friend sneered. You're thinking too much. The illusion technique of 1,000 illusions is not that simple. Illusion technique is an attack on the mind. He's still far from showing his true ability. Just as he said this, the Mirage Boy in the arena finally decided not to hold back anymore. The 1,000 arms behind him retreated, and the boy's smiling face melted like snow, turning into a flat surface like water ripples. In the surging ripples, new facial features were regenerated, and his slender body suddenly elongated, becoming strong and straight. Then the clothes on his body also changed, turning into a red and white Taoist robe. Finally, a bright smile appeared on his face. At that moment, the Heavenly Sword Hall elders who were watching the battle from Lingjian School all stood up at the same time. Their eyes were wide open and filled with anger. He actually dared to turn into this appearance? At the same time, Wang Wu was also shocked. Eldest senior brother, it's you? Ouyang Shang, who was on the opposite side, smiled lightly. Long time no see. His posture and tone were exactly the same as the eldest senior brother of Lingjian School, who had passed away a long time ago. The real illusion technique was to see through the weaknesses of people's hearts and bury the seeds of evil in the cracks. The Mirage Boy didn't know Wang Wu's story, but with the instinct of Dixian, he changed into the appearance that could most tease the opponent's heartstrings. There were always some people who knew that it was an illusion, but they still couldn't bear to do it. The illusionary child had used this move to defeat countless strong enemies 10,000 years ago. This time it was likely that it would not be an exception. For women, love was always a killer move. Indeed, long time no see. Sure enough, Wang Wu sighed and unconsciously put down the 100 transformation bamboo stick in her hand. Then she stepped forward in front of Ouyang Shang. Her slender palm clenched into a fist, and under the opponent's incredulous gaze, she fiercely punched the bridge of his nose. While he was stunned, his nose was bleeding like a fountain. Ha ha ha, I wanted to play like this for a long time. Unfortunately, he died too early, and there were no bones left. I couldn't even whip his corpse. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Chapter 642. Good punch. Under Wang Wu's punch, Mirage Boy's King Pill body and protective sword energy couldn't resist at all. In an instant, the bridge of his nose shattered into pieces, and his head became dizzy. Even the martial monks who were best at Vajra Vidyaraja in the Zen sect couldn't have such a hard fist. Mirage Boy suspected that if he was hit a few more times, the whole illusion would collapse because of this. However, this was necessary pain. The illusion that disintegrated the mind rarely worked in one hit, and the vicious seeds needed a long time to germinate. During this period, it was common for the opponent to instinctively question, and even kill him. Mirage Boy once incarnated into a mother's long-dead son in front of her. At first, the mother didn't move, but after seeing that it was an illusion, she directly chose to attack. However, under the painstaking efforts of the illusionary child, the other party was finally unable to resist the erosion of the illusionary technique and revealed a fatal flaw. And that time, the illusionary child used a whole month's time, during which he experienced countless tortures of hovering between life and death. However, Mirage Boy never expected that the battle with Wang Wu would be so difficult. Under the restriction of the Great Vow of the Heart Demons, she shouldn't have the ability to take the initiative to attack, but he didn't expect that she would throw such a powerful punch. Sure enough, for this pair of master and disciple, the Great Vow of the Heart Demons was useless. After the punch, Wang Wu's face was full of joy. While wiping her fist with a handkerchief, she said, Don't misunderstand, I've always followed my oath seriously. I won't take the initiative to hurt people with immortal spells, unless I'm hurt by the opponent and I return the favor. Mirage Boy was angry and amused at the same time. I didn't do anything just now. I just said hello to you, and you rewarded me with a face-breaking punch. Wang Wu saw through his thoughts and sneered. Do you think you're innocent? Do you know how seriously your illusion hurt my pure girl's heart? Mirage Boy had to use a lot of patience to hold back from cursing out loud. Do you think you're worthy of a girl's heart? I've been cultivating for almost 1,000 years, but I've never seen a pure girl who eats, drinks, and gambles. If it weren't for the fact that maintaining illusions had become second nature to him for thousands of years, Wang Wu's words would have almost destroyed the Mirage Boy's illusions. However, Dixian had the state of mind of a Dixian after all. The Mirage Boy quickly extinguished the anger in his heart, and once again immersed his mind into the illusion. He gathered up his immortal heart that had been shaken back and forth, and gradually let himself enter the world of Ouyang Shang. Regardless of whether they were pure or not, a woman's heart would always be infatuated. This person, Wang Wu, was probably the same. He wasn't afraid that she wouldn't take the bait. Junior sister, we haven't seen each other for over 100 years. But you've given me such a big surprise the moment we meet. In the arena, the young man in the red and white robe casually wiped off the bloodstains on his face and then smiled. But I'm still very happy to see you. Damn it, this guy actually. Outside the arena, the second elder of the Lingjian school's Heavenly Sword Hall, Lu Xian, couldn't help but curse. The tone was exactly the same as it was 150 years ago, the same posture and expression, even the slightest flaw couldn't be found. Even though they knew that this was an illusion, people still couldn't help but think of that person, the person who meant a lot to everyone. Even though they were outside the arena, the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall couldn't help but let their thoughts wander. So the people inside the arena were shocked and shaken. Everyone knew that the person Wang Wu liked the most was her eldest senior brother. Even if her temperament changed greatly after the disaster, the matter about her eldest senior brother was always a taboo that should never be touched. It wasn't until Wang Lu came to the mountain in recent years that her attitude slightly loosened. But at this moment, Mirage Boy resurrected the dead with an illusion. So no one could guarantee whether Wang Wu could keep calm. Lu Xian turned his head and questioned Dixian. To imitate to such an extent, have you been planning for a long time? The friend of Mirage Boy shook his head and said, Planning? No one will plan for a mere king pill. He doesn't know who the man in the red and white robe is at all. This is just one of the effects of the immortal technique. What the hell is this immortal technique? Mirage Boy really didn't know Ouyang Shang. Although he had collected some information about Wang Wu before the competition because she had defeated Bai Zhe, his understanding of Ouyang Shang was only that there was such a person in Wang Wu's life. He didn't know anything else. However, Mirage Boy's illusion was like a mirror, which would faithfully reflect the key points in the opponent's heart. It was none other than the indelible memory in Wang Wu's heart that made this flawless illusion. And the effect of the immortal technique was not limited to this. Because anyone's memory would be beautified and modified, Mirage Boy also needed to guide the cause and effect, further perfecting the foundation of the opponent's memory with the supreme mysterious power, and finally perfectly simulating all the characteristics of the opponent. In a sense, during the maintenance of the illusion, Ouyang Shang, who should have been dead for more than 100 years, was really resurrected. Junior sister, I understand how difficult it is for you to accept this unexpected reunion. But to be honest, it's not easy to meet again, but I was subjected to domestic violence by you. It really hurts my heart, Ouyang Shang said as he approached Wang Wu. Unsurprisingly, Wang Wu met him with a heavy punch again. Then Ouyang Shang used a perfect earth escape technique to blend into the ground and dodged behind Wang Wu. He grabbed her with both arms, wanting to hug her. But the golden sword energy immediately supported him and bounced him away. Oh, I haven't seen you for more than 100 years. Junior sister, you've actually cultivated such a brilliant sword technique? Haha, as expected of inheriting my legacy, it makes me feel that I didn't die in vain. Wang Wu sighed and said, you really know how to provoke others in a provocative way. Using this face to say such words to me. Ouyang Shang thought for a while and said, Junior sister, you're right. It's rare for us to meet again, but I'm saying such high-sounding nonsense. No wonder you're unhappy. Okay, I'll be straightforward. It's rare for us to meet again, so let's make love. You're courting death. Wang Wu frowned. The emerald bamboo sword in her hand flashed, and the cold light of mysterious frost bloomed from her palm. A silver-haired and silver-eyed sword spirit showed a translucent body from the light and agile sword body. She held the sword with both hands and swung it from top to bottom. The cold air that could freeze everything and the sharp sword energy wrapped each other like a surging tide. The mysterious frost sword was a middle-grade spiritual treasure. At this time it was accompanied by Wang Wu. With her full strength, the power of this sword was several times stronger than the one Wang Lu used to force the mysterious frost sword spirit to self-destruct with the golden seal of the sect. However, when the frosty sword chi swept past, it was blocked by a towering mountain. Ouyang Shang raised his hand and turned the earth upside down. The thick earth element spiritual energy condensed into an indestructible shield, isolating all damage. Oh, don't be angry. In fact, if you think about my proposal carefully, you should be able to realize that this is an excellent idea. You and I only had time to exchange our true feelings that day, but we didn't have time to exchange bodily fluids. Life is missing a very important link, isn't it? Now, although I'm only resurrected because of the illusion, at least at this moment I really exist. Ridiculous, Wang Wu said coldly. She withdrew the mysterious frost sword. And then the emerald bamboo sword flew out of her hand and stabbed into the mountain where Ouyang Shang was. The tip of the sword sank into the rock and soil. The next moment, thousands of emerald bamboo swords burst out from the mountain. Wood restrains earth. And the indestructible mountain was also defeated by the vitality of the emerald bamboo. Ouyang Shang didn't care. He used the earth escape technique to escape a few miles away. Of course, my existence is only temporary. Perhaps when the illusionary child dispels the illusion, I will vanish into thin air. But before that, we still have time to make love and leave behind a crystal that will never vanish into thin air. Junior sister, I'm looking forward to what our child will look like. Shut up. The sharp sword light interrupted Ouyang Shang's incessant speech, but he quickly found the opportunity to speak again. Junior sister, I can understand the resistance in your heart. We haven't seen each other for more than 100 years, and the first time you meet, you come to make love. This kind of behavior of a beast in heat is indeed too rough, but time really waits for no man. I can still barely control this illusion, but after all, the illusion is the origin and I'm just a derivative. The time I can last is very limited, so we might as well take a step back. As he said that, Ouyingshang took out a small porcelain bottle from his pocket. This is the life essence that I just extracted. Quickly integrate it into your body, and then yin and yang will be born. This is the supreme principle of heaven and earth. The new life will break away from the illusion, and will no longer be controlled by the mirage boy. That will be a child that truly belongs to you and me, and will be the continuation of our lives. Another sharp sword light slashed across, directly cutting open Ouyingshang's thick defense, causing him to be slightly flustered. Hey, don't be so stubborn. This opportunity is really rare. Be careful not to break the porcelain bottle. The life essence is not very easy to extract. Ridiculous. As Wang Wu said that, she suddenly stopped what she was doing and sighed. You idiot, haven't you considered that the reason you can maintain your existence is precisely because I didn't let you have your way? As long as I don't comply, the Mirage Boy can't stop the illusion for a moment, and this illusory reunion will continue, until I can no longer hold on. As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar outside. What's wrong with Fifth Junior Sister? Is she planning to give up? I feel that this can't be blamed on her. In these 100 years, her heart has been the one that can't let go. And not to mention Fifth Junior Sister, if it were me, how could I bear to personally cut off the foundation of eldest senior brother's existence? Even if she knows that all of this is just a dream, it's good to be able to dream for a moment longer. However, Fifth Junior Sister doesn't seem to be such a weak-willed person. That's because eldest senior brother isn't here. Think about it, if eldest senior brother could live until now, how would she become like this? That's right, back then, she was actually the most naive in terms of feelings. Several Heavenly Sword Hall elders discussed for a while, and their hearts gradually sank. This time, the opponent's illusion was too cunning. Only Feng Yin, who knew more inside information, almost couldn't help but laugh out loud when he heard this. Fifth Junior Sister, you are indeed cunning. You actually put your own calculations on the surface. As long as she doesn't comply, the opponent can't stop the illusion for even a moment, and this illusory reunion will continue until she can no longer hold on. The question is, how long can she last? Feng Yin used the star diffraction technique to roughly calculate, and the result was as expected. It really is infinite. There is only one day left in 2014. Please vote for the Golden Keyboard Award. I hope that the readers with votes can vote for me. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 643. Senior Brother. Let's make this jade flute together at noon. I've only read about it in a book before. I thought the author made it up out of thin air, but I have a friend who is a chef who said that it can actually be made. I think there's no harm in giving it a try. Oh my God. It's rare for a person who never washes dishes to be interested in doing housework. But I appreciate your kindness, so please put down the kitchen knife. Hey, put down the kitchen knife. Do you want me to tear it with my hands? That's not impossible. After all, my slender hands are quite exquisite. No, Junior Sister. Please move away from the kitchen and leave the rest to me. Wang Wu was astonished. Why, Senior Brother, when did you learn cooking? Ouyingshang shrugged. To be honest, I've never learned it seriously. Then why did you take my job? To survive. Ouyingshang seriously said. Although I don't have any good cooking skills, at least I have the ability to cook non-toxic and harmless rice. Upon hearing this, Wang Wu sneered. Oh, does that mean my cooking is poisonous and harmful? Yesterday, I basically didn't eat the 24 moonlit bridges of love that you made. I just put it in the jade box as evidence. You might as well taste it yourself to see if it's non-toxic and harmless. By the way, the chef that you often mention who gave you all kinds of inspirations, is she from the 10,000 Poison School? TSK, she is from the royal family of the Western continent. Since childhood, she has been living a luxurious life. Now she has been the chef of a super sect in the Wanxian League for many years. Yet you dare to doubt her cooking? Ouyingshang said, otherwise should I doubt my own tongue and IQ? Moreover, if her recipe is really reliable, why don't you eat that 24 moonlit bridges? Wang Wu said, because I want to give all my love to you. Please at least give yourself a little bit of self-respect. Humph, to put it bluntly, you still don't love me enough? I'm sorry, because I love you, I can't bear to let you be a widow, so I won't eat that suicidal thing. Outside the arena, countless spectators were dumbstruck as they watched the battle gradually develop in a direction that no one had expected. In the battle between Mirage Boy and Wang Wu, it was a fast-paced exchange of attacks at first, with many twists and turns. However, as Mirage Boy used the real illusion to attack the mind, the rhythm of the battle changed rapidly. It was so peaceful that it was annoying. After the initial short battle, the two people on the stage seemed to have completely forgotten about their opposing positions. They began to chat about daily life, reminisce about the past, and sigh with emotion. Then they joined hands and built 2 wooden houses by the side of a brook, and lived there as neighbors. The pace of their lives was very stable. Because both of them were at the king pill level, they could be self-sufficient without external help, so there was no need for them to farm or raise livestock. Ouyangshang was adept at using the 5 elements, so he was able to create all kinds of tools for daily use. When the two were in the mood, they would pick up their flying swords and go hunting in the forest. The environment in the arena was highly simulated, and there were all kinds of rare birds and beasts in the forest, which could be used to cook delicious dishes. Today, the two were arguing about improving the taste of dishes. Although there was conflict between their words, there was more of a warm affection that made people feel sick. Wang Wu, Ouyangshang, the deep bond between the two could be seen by a blind person. That kind of deep affection was more than many vigorous vows of eternal love. However, the deeper the affection between the two, the more puzzled the audience was. What was Mirage Boy waiting for? Right now, Wang Wu was undoubtedly immersed in the illusion, completely trapped in the dream of eldest senior brother Ouyangshang's resurrection. Then why didn't Mirage Boy take the opportunity to win this battle? Why did he continue to maintain the illusion and let the adulterous couple love each other day after day? Many of his teammates who were Earth Immortals couldn't figure it out. What is Qian Huan doing? It's been a month. If it doesn't work, just give up. It's a waste of time to hang around like this. Because Wang Wu's battle was not in the plan at all, in order to avoid affecting the whole situation, the two sides initially agreed to wait until the end of the battle before the grand competition would fully open. At that time, there would be dozens or hundreds of battles at the same time to save time. However, no one expected that this battle would drag on for a whole month, and there seemed to be no sign of it ending. What the hell? Is Qian Huan helping the opponent to delay time? Don't be impatient. Qian Huan has his own reason for not making a move. As a close friend of the illusionary child, the girl-like Earth Immortal Qinin stood up and said in a crisp voice, "Can't you see that in the past month, Wang Wu has never let down her vigilance? She seems to be trapped in the illusion, but have any of you ever seen the Black Frost sword leave her waist? She and that man seem to have a life and death relationship. But have you ever seen them intimate even once in the past month? They didn't even hold hands." When everyone heard this, they were stunned. When they recalled it, they found that it was true. In the past month, the two seemed to be intimate, but they always maintained a subtle distance. If Qian Huan put down his illusion at this time and launched a surprise attack, it would be very difficult to achieve the result. However, there's only one line left. Wang Wu's heart defense will soon collapse. Qin Yin's eyes were awe-inspiring. No matter how much resistance she has in her heart, her feelings for that person are too deep. At the same time, after finishing a simple meal, Wang Wu, who was watching Ouyangshang using the 5 elements spell to wash the tableware, suddenly said, "Senior brother, do you still remember what Uncle Master Lingbao said when I first entered the sect and met him?" Ouyangshang said, "Of course I remember. Damn it, the traditional elder must be blind. How could he accept this kind of rotten melon as his disciple? Let alone ascend, this kind of waste that has no hope of reaching Yuanying stage in his lifetime to do odd jobs for everyone?" Humph, because of that sentence I hated him for 20 years. Uncle Lingbao has always been like this. His mouth has never been guarded. When he appraised his son's spirit root, he also blindly said that this kind of middle-grade spirit root idiot simply tarnished his noble bloodline, and that most likely his wife had an affair. Ah, I remember. And then he was beaten until he couldn't take care of himself for many years, right? Yes, his wife Fairy Ling Yun is from the Royal Soldier sect, more than 50 years older than him, and her cultivation base is also a level higher than him, so domestic violence is common. But Uncle Lingbao's nature is not bad. There's no need to hate him. Of course not. That year's disaster. For a period of time, I was separated from the main group and encountered a powerful evil spirit whose cultivation base was comparable to peak deity stage. When I was about to die in the hands of the evil spirit, it was Uncle Lingbao who rushed out and perished together with him, so I survived. So it was him. I always thought he didn't like me, but that day he stood out and then died. From beginning to end, he didn't say a word to me, didn't even look at me. But I still realized that I hated a person I shouldn't have hated for so many years. And then? Later, after that disaster was over, I wanted to go to the Royal Soldier Sect to find Senior Ling Yun. But the people of the Royal Soldier Sect told me that when Uncle Lingbao died, Senior Ling Yun died for love. She and Uncle Lingbao fought and quarreled all her life, and she often complained that Uncle Lingbao's cultivation base was not advanced enough. Moreover, for more than a year, she lived with her child in her parents' home. But no one in the world loved Uncle Lingbao more than her. Yes, otherwise, how could the daughter of a dignified high-rank aristocratic family, a genius with a promising future in the Royal Soldier Sect, condescend to marry a boy who was still unknown at that time? Alas, the disaster of the fallen immortal is really distressing. Wang Wu said, yes, but we have all survived and did not disappoint your expectations, senior brother. I know you won't. It's just that I still deeply regret that I couldn't accompany you through that difficult journey. As Ouyang Shang spoke, he placed the last plate into the cupboard. Then, he raised his head and looked at the illusory and bright moon in the arena. I regret that I can't really rely on you, regret that I can't be with you, regret that I can't be with you, for you on the road of immortal cultivation, regret that I can only spend this wonderful time with you in this illusion. Regret that there are still too many words in my heart that I don't have time to say to you. Regret. You and I are close at hand, but as far as the horizon. With that, Ouyang Shang shook his head in a self-deprecating manner and sighed, Junior sister, I actually want to hug you, but I can't do it anymore. Wang Wu said softly, how could I not want to? For more than 100 years, there is not a moment when I don't look forward to you reappearing in front of me, and I'm even willing to pay any price. Ouyang Shang said, I'm very happy to hear that you always remember me, but I'm even more happy to see you come out of your memories and see that you didn't make a stupid choice. In this way, it was not in vain for me to work hard and come back from the dead to suppress the illusion for you. Wang Wu smiled. That idiot only thought that a perfect simulation of a person could make the other party lower their guard, but he didn't think that if the person he perfectly simulated was far beyond his control, what would happen? He actually wanted to use the illusion to enslave you. He really thought too much. Ouyang Shang said, however, I have almost reached my limit after persisting until now. So it's time to say goodbye. Alas, only at this time will pass particularly fast. Is there anything else you want to say to me? Wang Wu smiled and said, for more than 100 years, I have set everything in front of your grave. You can go down and think about it. But you, is there anything else you want to say to me? Ouyang Shang touched his chin a little awkwardly. One last question, you can think of it as me gossiping. What I'm more curious about is, who is the person who helped you out of the shadow? Wang Wu's smile became more and more brilliant. Can you see that I have a new lover? What do you think? Most likely a handsome and talented young man like me? Wang Wu shook her head. TSK, it can't be a seemingly deep uncle, right? Your taste shouldn't have degenerated to that point, right? Wang Wu continued to shake her head, and her expression was obviously a little angry. Guessed wrong? Damn, wait, let me confirm first, is it a man or a woman? Wang Wu silently put her hand on the hilt of the mysterious frost sword. Well, I can't guess, you'd better just say the answer directly. Ouyang Shang had an expression of giving up treatment, and at the same time, his figure began to disappear little by little from his feet. This illusion of turning the guest into the host had finally come to an end. Seeing that the tactic was ineffective, Mirage Boy began to take the initiative to remove the illusion. Wang Wu chuckled. Actually, your guess at the beginning was a little close. It's a handsome and talented young man. Ouyang Shang asked curiously, what's the difference? The only difference is, it's not about the same as you, but more handsome than you. Damn! Your lie is a little fake. The only one who can be more handsome than me is me 100 years later. Wang Wu heard this and was slightly startled. You're a little crazy. But, as she spoke, she took 2 steps forward, walked in front of Ouyang Shang, and her cherry lips gently touched the latter's cheek. However, in my heart, no one can replace you. Ouyang Shang sighed. I really feel that it would be better to replace you. No need, I will feel that I have the 2 best men in the world, and I will have twice the happiness. Wang Wu gently closed her eyes, no longer looking at the last scene of Ouyang Shang completely disappearing. Big brother, thank you. Happy New Year to everyone. Chapter 644. *T. Can't we see the situation in the arena? Yeah, the picture is completely stuck. We can only see that the child has turned into a young man in a red and white robe. After that, the picture hasn't changed for a month. What the hell is going on? Who is responsible for the repair of this sign? Just now, a golden armored soldier passed by. Did you report it to him? *T. That golden armored soldier can't even understand human language. What's the use of reporting it to him? If you talk too much, he will warn you not to interfere with official business. I say, is there anyone who is good at refining to go up and see how to repair it? It's useless. All the equipment in this city of immortals is the work of Dixian. Let's not talk about whether we can repair it or not. If we casually dismantle it, the golden armored soldier will regard it as a hostile act and stop it on the spot. Thinking of the behavior pattern of the golden armored soldier in stopping hostile behavior, people felt creeped out, and no one mentioned the problem of repairing the sign. I wish everyone a happy new year. Asking for a few golden keyboard votes, not asking for a ranking, at least not too ugly. Secondly, tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the evening, the Dota 2 book friend competition will start on time. At that time there will be a live broadcast on Douyu. Welcome to watch. Room number 131186, Dota 2 ID 172191215. Alas, it's a pity that we have no chance to watch it live. I heard that the central arena of Immortal 1 area contains a space magical ability that can accommodate millions of spectators. But if your level is not high enough, you can't enter. I wonder who on our side has reached the standard. Some time ago, Master Huasu went to try it, but he was battered by the barrier. He is, after all, a middle-level Yuanying stage expert, but he can't even enter the door. A small fries in the foundation establishment in Qi cultivating stage can forget about it. Alas, to be able to see Supreme He 2 and that female Earth Immortal's magical ability for free, as well as the fight between Supreme Non-Phase and that boy, is not a loss at all. Yeah, after a month I still have a bit of lingering fear when I think about that yin and yang separation method. This is still seen through the broadcast of the sign. If I was there, I'm afraid my Dao heart would be gone with just a glance. So, you're saying that not allowing unauthorized people to enter is a form of protection for us? Who can say for sure? Alas, when I heard that the competition was about to begin, I traveled thousands of miles from the eastern border region to the southern heaven region. Who knew that when I came to the city of immortals, I've been waiting for half a year, but I haven't seen the competition officially start. Although there is food and water here, and the spiritual qi is enough for cultivation, I still feel like something is missing. A bunch of useless fellows. In Area B3, a youth with slender limbs carried a basket of oranges and looked disdainfully at the group of cultivators gathered under the signboard in the center. Over the past month, he was used to seeing these cultivators who were good at empty talk sighing. At first he thought it was interesting, but now he simply felt that they were a group of waste. Yes, in this city of immortals there was food and drink and life was worry-free. Before the competition started, there was not much to do, but this was not a reason for idleness. Nowadays there were a lot of busy people in the city, and not everyone gathered under the signboard every day, waiting for the picture to be restored. Most of the people who came to the city of immortals, whether they were cultivators or mortals, knew that this opportunity was rare, and they would do their best to fight for it. For example, a certain youth who carried the oranges was one of them. Dead face, the golden oranges that you wanted have finally arrived. As Shu Si spoke, he unceremoniously kicked the door of a shop in the corner of Area B3. After a loud bang, the entire door was kicked away. But before it could fall to the ground, the wooden door floated in midair and stopped. Then, a middle-aged Taoist with a livid face came out of the house. "Okay, have you checked the quality?" He reached out and pushed the wooden door back to the distance, and then took the basket of oranges from the youth's hand. "Nonsense, how could I have made any mistakes when I was doing things? Of course it has been checked. They are all high-quality goods. This basket of oranges is worth 200 spirit stones. Speaking of which, Deadface, what do you want so many oranges for? Your face is already ugly enough. If you eat too many oranges, be careful not to get orange disease." Deadface snorted and the corner of his mouth trembled slightly. He seemed to want to laugh, but his smile was creepy. "This basket of oranges is for you." "What?" Shu Si had just rushed into the inner room to pour himself tea. When he heard this, the hot water almost poured on his hand. "For me? What do I want oranges for?" "Of course, to eat. You have to finish this basket today and tomorrow." "What the hell, Deadface, are you kidding me? You have just drunk the 8 Desolation 6 Directions soup, which has opened up the human body's apertures and formed the spirit root. You have officially embarked on the road of cultivation. But your talent and aptitude are too poor, so I'm afraid 50 to 60% of the potency of the soup will evaporate. If you don't want to lose too much of the potency, which would leave you with a mixed spirit root, then obediently eat all the golden oranges produced by the Green Tree School." Shu Si's mouth twitched. "It doesn't matter if I have a mixed spirit root. Anyway, I'm not immortal anymore." Before he could finish his sentence, he saw a golden tangerine with branches and leaves that hadn't even been peeled off hit his head. It was stuffed directly into his mouth, shaking his gums so much that he felt pain. "Since you have become my disciple, I will never allow you to become a waste. Although this 8 Desolation 6 Direction soup is not a superior product with your physique, it is barely the most suitable one. After taking it, if you take it and adjust it well, you can stabilize the level of your spirit root to the middle grade realm. In the future, you will have the possibility of achieving the King Pill." Shu Si was taken aback. "I can achieve the King Pill? Deadface, you think too highly of me." Unfortunately, his mouth had already been stuffed with oranges. The bitterness of the orange peel and the sweetness of the pulp mixed together, making him unable to say a word. "And when you reach the King Pill realm, you can really be regarded as the sea and the sky. Humph, don't underestimate the King Pill. A King Pill contains infinite possibilities. If not, I would be too lazy to pay attention to a naughty little mouse like you." Shu Si swallowed the orange with great difficulty and gasped for breath. "Deadface, there's a limit to your pretentiousness. Okay? You still dare to look down on the King Pill? Who is looking down on the King Pill? I have never expected to reach Shudan stage in my life. Being able to reach Qi cultivating stage is already a rare immortal opportunity. Okay? But your cultivation base is only at foundation establishment stage, yet you actually dare to talk about the King Pill realm with confidence and composure. Isn't your face too thick? This dead face is also because of its amazing thickness that the blood circulation can't reach it, right?" Shu Si spat out the orange comfortably, but the next orange quickly flew over and completely blocked his mouth. "Are you satisfied with Qi cultivating stage? Don't forget who gave you the immortal opportunity when you came to this city of immortals. If you stop at Qi cultivating stage in this life, it would be a disgrace to him." Shu Si inwardly scolded. "People are so busy every day that they don't even remember me. Moreover, what does it have to do with you whether Wang Lu is disgraced or not? Is he your godfather or not? Having a godson like you is really a stain on Wang Lu's name." However, the little mouse was very clear about the fact that the situation was stronger than the person. No matter how unbearable Dead Face was, he was at least a foundation establishment stage cultivator. And when he just got his spirit root, he only became a little stronger, and he hadn't even started cultivating yet. In order to avoid being choked to death by the orange, he had to eat this loss first. "By the way, Deadface, what do you think is going on over there?" Shu Si very cleverly chose to change the topic. He pointed to the sky outside the house and said, "The screen has been stuck for a month, and in this month the high-level people on both sides have never appeared again. It's really inexplicable. Don't tell me there's something wrong with the arena?" Deadface coldly humphed and said, If there's really a problem, how could the entire city of immortals be so peaceful? It's just that there are people in the arena who don't want outsiders to see the details. Most likely they have some trump card that can't be exposed at will. As for a month, what is it for a fight between experts? I have seen a king pill level fight that lasted for half a year. Shu Si inwardly scolded. Do you think you deserve to see a king pill level fight? If there's a Taoist master of king pill, the aftermath would blow you away. However, his words were, then who do you think will win, Taoist master non-phase or that Dixian boy? Humph, that's a stupid question. With that, Deadface turned around and went back to the house. How could that person lose? At the same time, while many people outside the arena were talking about the situation in the arena, the people in the audience also had different opinions. Because they couldn't see the situation in the arena. Compared with those who watched the broadcast outside the arena, they had only watched a month's worth of heartwarming romance drama. And when the drama ended and the climax came, the picture was also fixed. Hey, why doesn't the person inside move? At first, people thought that this was a sign that the two sides were about to reveal their true intentions, but soon they realized that this was a smokescreen used by the person inside and didn't want to expose what would happen next. It seems that we won. The friend of Mirage Boy smiled leisurely and said, I suggest you admit defeat for the person inside as soon as possible. He too glanced at her and didn't speak, but the red-robed patriarch unceremoniously scolded, bullshit. The person inside is motionless, how do you know that you've won? The girl said, isn't it easy to understand? Why is the picture stagnant? Because your supreme non-phase finally couldn't resist the erosion of illusion and began to open her heart to her true love. So she began to do what she loved to do. If such a scene was exposed to the eyes of the public, I'm afraid it would have a very bad impact on her, right? Although Qian Huan often wins with illusion and is accused of being despicable, he is essentially a very decent person and won't embarrass his opponent too much. Think about it, if Wang Wu has the upper hand with her temper, she should show off the situation where she has the upper hand, showing off her strength. The girl's words were reasonable, making people completely unable to refute. Several Supremes in the Wanxian League suddenly looked at the arena worriedly. It was a pity that this arena was built with long-lost immortal technology, which completely isolated the perception of the outside world, so that they couldn't detect the situation in the arena. I say, he too, why don't we admit defeat first? It's better than letting that child Wang Wu really suffer any humiliation. He too was silent, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Obviously, he also had an idea in his mind. At this moment, an unexpected voice came in. There's no need for that, just wait for the result. Hearing this, the red-robed patriarch was stunned, then turned his head in surprise. Wang Lu, you brat, you're finally awake? Hey, I slept for a whole month. If I didn't wake up, would I be waiting for a princess on a white horse to kiss me? As Wang Lu spoke, he jumped to the front row of the rostrum, leaned forward, and looked at the stagnant scene in the arena with interest. Especially his gaze stayed on the young man in the red and white robe for a long time. Haha, the effect of this illusion is not bad, it's almost like the real thing, restoring every detail of this idiot. TSK, this zombie resurrection script is quite powerful. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard the sect elder Lu Xian say angrily, Wang Lu, don't be presumptuous. Do you know who that person is? Hearing this, Wang Lu was stunned, then smiled and said, I know Wang Wu's old lover. Lu Xian was about to reprimand Wang Lu for being so casual, but he was stopped by his senior brother. Although he did not understand why his senior brother stopped him, he still held back and did not say anything. The Dixian girl looked at Wang Lu for a while and said, Hey, are you sure you don't need to admit defeat? Your master may have been pushed down by now. Although everything is an illusion, it may cause irreparable damage to the person himself. Wang Lu grinned. Don't worry, the irreparable damage has already been done more than 150 years ago. The girl was about to say something, but she saw a black shadow flash beside her. On the Dixian side, the real person in charge walked over. Enough, we admit defeat this round. Chapter 645. Admit defeat. This why? Because if we don't admit defeat, we will be the ones to lose face. As the black-robed man spoke, He directly pushed the boundary of the outer wall of the arena, causing a ripple, and the stagnant scene in the arena began to distort. But more importantly, with the intervention of his external force, the whole arena was suffused with a red light full of warning, and more than 10 golden armored strongmen appeared out of thin air. These strongmen were glowing with red light, and their bodies were engraved with patterns that were far more complex and mysterious than those of ordinary strongmen. Their momentum was also 10 times stronger. More than 10 strongmen appeared together. Even a supreme-level cultivator's breath would stagnate. This was the strongest force guarding the Immortal One area. Each of them had the pure power of a supreme-level cultivator, but their magical power was not as good. But more than 10 strongmen were dispatched together, which was enough to give any supreme a headache. These red gold strongmen were personally cast by more than 100 Dixian, but they were not instructed by anyone. They only acted according to the rules set at the beginning of the casting, and guarded the order of the Immortal One area's arena. Anyone who dared to violate the rules would be absolutely suppressed by these red gold strongmen. After the black-robed Dixian drew out these strongmen, he took 2 steps back and raised his hand. Okay, we admit defeat, go back. The red gold strongmen hovered around him a few times, and after confirming that there was no mistake, they floated away. At this time the battle on the field also came to an end. Wang Wu jumped out first with a smile on her face. Seeing Wang Lu standing in the front row of the rostrum, her smile was even brighter. Yo, you woke up? So fast? Why didn't you sleep a little longer? Wang Lu laughed and said, Nonsense, if I didn't wake up, moss would grow on my head. Haha, little Lu, you are so humorous. Unfortunately, you didn't see the scene of me fighting against Dixian just now. Haha, testing me? Unfortunately, who said I didn't see it? Haha, little Lu, don't talk nonsense, you slept like a log during this period, what did you see? Who told you I slept like a log? With my character, would I sleep on the rostrum for more than a month without any precaution? Master, you can't look down on me like this. So you really saw it? Of course I saw it. As Wang Lu spoke, the smile on his face became more and more radiant. Master, you're so amazing. You were able to hold on in that kind of situation and even drag it out for more than a month. It must have been tough on you for more than a month. The word hard was said with a pause between every word. As a result, Wang Wu, who had always been fearless, actually had beads of sweat on her forehead. Well, I think there might be some misunderstanding between us, master and disciple. PFFF, haha, master, you're so funny. Why are you so nervous like a newlywed wife? Of course, I slept like a log for the past month or so. At that time, I was about to die. How could I have the spare energy to separate my primordial spirit to look outside? It's just a lie. Ha ha ha, little Lu, you're getting more and more mischievous. You flatter me. How can I be as naughty as a two-timer? F***ck. How much do you know? Haha, master, you're anxious again. I'm just lying to you. Of course I didn't see anything. Ha ha ha, you little bastard, don't tell me that you recorded the whole thing and just watched the video? Ha ha ha, master, how do you know me so well? Don't tell me we knew each other in our previous life? The master and disciple duo chatted cheerfully with a smile that made the hair of others stand on end, and the surrounding temperature continued to drop. Just when the surrounding people felt that they could not stand it anymore, the illusionary child also walked out from the arena. His face was solemn, and the smile on his face was gone. Dixian's side hurriedly interrupted the fight between the master and disciple of non-phase. Thousand illusions, how are you? Phew, it's an eye-opener. As the illusionary child said this, he patted his cheeks and tried to make the smile return to his face. I'm convinced of this battle. Plus, it's beneficial to my illusions. Even if I lost, it's worth it. Before he could finish his words, one of his companions smiled bitterly. Worth it? We've lost 2 games in a row. It's really unexpected that even you can't do anything to that woman. Upon hearing this, Mirage Boy's face turned serious. According to the rules of this grand competition, no one is her opponent. In the future, whenever she appears in the competition, we can just abstain directly. What? Mirage Boy's words made his companions feel inconceivable. Wait a minute. Thousand Illusions naturally saw the confusion of his companions, so he stretched out his hand and an illusion that distorted the cause and effect covered the space. In the eyes of the Wanxian League, They saw that the group of Dixians were still talking with a dignified face, which showed a deep fear of Wang Wu. Although she is King Pill, her real strength is no less than that of peak deity stage. What's more, her mind is invulnerable. If we want to defeat her in the same stage, unless we take out all our cards, we might have a chance of winning, but it's not high. Instead, we would expose our cards in vain. I remember that in most of the matches, the King Pill level matches are the first, followed by Yuanying in deity stage. If she cheats out her cards in the King Pill level matches, it would be too disadvantageous for the later matches. After all, 9 regions is so big, who can guarantee that there is only one person like her? This remark was reasonable. Plus, Mirage Boy's illusion in Dixian stage was flawless, so the Wanxian League did not doubt him and did not pay too much attention to him. However, in fact, what Mirage Boy wanted to say was another thing. In short, I suspect that her King Pill is an outside path. Outside path? Yes, at least not the immortal path that we cultivate. At least, I don't believe that the King Pill in the general sense can be so strong. She just looks like the King Pill. When Mirage Boy finished speaking, the people around him were shocked. Even the man in black stopped and turned around to listen quietly. Is this possible? Xian Mo could not help but ask. This is after the age of chaos, the surrounding spiritual energy is scarce, and the great Tao is also blinded. Even the road to immortality is difficult and bumpy. How could an outside path cultivator reach this point? One person speculated. Perhaps it is because the right way is blocked that some people take the unorthodox path. The so-called immortal path is just a narrow path cut out by the powerful people in the Age of Desolation hundreds of thousands of years ago. After countless generations of later generations, it gradually became the Great Tao. However, it doesn't mean that other paths can't be taken. I have seen with my own eyes that the power of the outside path is not inferior to you and me. It's really surprising that there are still outside path cultivators after the Age of Chaos. However, at this point, one person suddenly realized something and angrily said, if she really is an outside path cultivator, why would she still pretend to be the King Pill? The previous matches are simply cheating. Mirage Boy shook his head and said, there's no evidence. I've been fighting with her for more than a month, but I can't see through her at all. No matter from which point of view, she's just an ordinary peak King Pill. The operation of her true yuan and the fluctuation of her primordial spirit are far from the ordinary outside path. Therefore, even if we accuse her of cheating, it would be meaningless. Instead, it would make people think that we can't afford to lose. However, this kind of outside path cultivator is almost invincible under the current rules. Even if we go all out, it would only expose our trump card. I suspect that her strength is not yet at its bottom. If we give up all the matches related to her, how many points will we lose? Xian Mo counted with his fingers and said, at most 510 points, which is irrelevant to the overall situation. Mirage Boy said, well, I also think that's the result. Therefore, we can afford to lose, and there's no need to cause a greater loss for these 500 points. In addition, let the people behind us be more serious when they make their move. These guys are not as bad as we think. Not to mention the number 1 person in 9 regions, he too. I don't think any of the sect leaders of those super sects are easy to deal with. Moreover, what I care more about is their ability to learn and grow. I was delayed by Wang Wu for more than a month, plus the opening ceremony was forcibly delayed for 3 months. It's a bit long. The man in black said, after the main competition begins, there will be no paper competition. Everyone do your best, strive to break their morale in the shortest time, and end this farce as soon as possible. If necessary, I will also take action. Black, you also. Upon hearing this, several Dixian people were pleasantly surprised. Only when it's necessary. The man in black said coldly, I'm a sinner, not worthy of your dependence. Don't forget what I've done. On the other side of the rostrum, the people of Wanxian League were not idle. Wang Wu, in your opinion, that Mirage Boy? Before He Tu's voice fell, Wang Wu waved her hand indifferently and said, there's nothing great about him. In Dixian, he's probably above average, similar to Xian Mo. Upon hearing Wang Wu's words, the people around them were slightly relieved. The true illusion technique of Mirage Boy was really frightening. It was already so powerful in the King Pill realm, so who could resist it in a higher realm? However, since Wang Wu said so, perhaps there were some unknown weaknesses in the actual fight. As long as they could grasp it, they would have a chance to win. You seem to have misunderstood. What I mean is, if we meet him in other competitions in the future, except for me, everyone else can directly forfeit. There's no need to waste any more time. Huff. Wang Wu said seriously. In addition, I suggest that after the main competition begins, we should temporarily send out some weaker players. Why? Because I guess that Dixian intends to end the fight quickly, and use the fastest speed to achieve a comprehensive victory in the early stage to destroy our morale, and make the situation of the grand competition irreversible. During this period they will send out all their experts. With our current strength we can't win. He too asked, if we can't do the fighting, what about the literary fight? It's the same. The other side has Luo Shueferi, who is proficient in all kinds of arts and is close to the Tao. It's difficult for us to win in the 4 arts: chess, calligraphy and painting. In addition, several sub-events in the fighting are similar. There are insurmountable difficulties. The red-robed patriarch asked, how do you know it so well? Of course they told me. Wang Wu smiled and said, although Mirage Boy is not a core member of Dixian, his illusion technique is superb and he has a lot of information in his hands. Illusionary child, why did he tell you this information? Wang Wu said, of course it's because he's in an illusion. The real illusion trapped me for a month, but at the same time, how could he not be trapped by the illusion that I bounced back at him? Speaking to this, a happy smile appeared on Wang Wu's face. This fight is really fruitful. Just when he too and the others were stunned and guessed what Wang Wu had gained, they heard Wang Lu say gloomily, yes, it's a fruitful harvest. Damn it, did you see that? Chapter 646. It's really painful to be a prophet. In an exquisite courtyard in Immortal 5 area of the City of Immortals, Wang Wu lay on her back on a rockery, put down her wine gourd, and looked up at the blue sky, at the 2 figures fighting fiercely among the white clouds. The third match between the Union of 10,000 Immortals and the Earth Immortals in the Yuaning stage group, Poison Match, and one-on-one match was in progress. This was also the most watched battle in the past month, since the end of the battle between Wang Wu and Mirage Boy, and the full launch of the grand competition. The value of the victory alone was more than 50 points, which was better than the sum of 4 or 5 of those literary events. Moreover, the Wanxian League side was still a veteran Yuanying stage expert. Before the game, the public opinion was greatly exaggerated, as if the Wanxian League was determined to win this battle. Unfortunately, I'm almost blinded by his death omen star flash, a poor member of my great union of 10,000 immortals. With a sad face, Wang Wu gulped down half a gourd of wine. Before the incident, I predicted that that guy would die in this trip, but as a result, his supporters still blushed with me. No wonder it's said that being half a step ahead of the world is a genius, and 1 step ahead of the world is a madman. Stop talking nonsense, you can only be 1 step ahead of the world with your lower limit. People with discerning eyes know that he's going to die. The public opinion propaganda before the game is purely a few literati sensationalism. After all, fantasy is just fantasy. If singing a high tone can make me invincible, I don't have to go to the Western continent to work hard. Don't look at the people dancing happily on the stage now. In terms of singing a high tone, they are not as good as me. Under the rockery, Wang Lu held a stack of documents and continued to say with a sneer, I've already reminded them that at the beginning of the competition, Dixian will try its best to suppress the morale. The so-called pretending to be pretentious when the wind is favorable and pretending to be dead when the wind is adverse. In the early stage we need to avoid the sharp edge. Even the experts of the 5 uniques are pretending to be dead. However, some small sects jumped out to make noise. All of them have their eyes on the top of their heads and their hearts are higher than the sky. They can't be dissuaded. Now this senior Scarlet Blood Poison on the stage, who knows where he jumped out from, but he's being portrayed as some famous expert. Fuck you. Wang Wu said softly. Senior Scarlet Blood Poison was quite famous 70 years ago. He came from a high-rank sect, but because of his vicious nature and repeated taboo violations, he was expelled from the sect. However, he had a fortuitous encounter, and his strength was even stronger than his fellow disciples. I don't care if he was famous back then. Isn't he still being F***ed on stage now? TSK. Isn't the scarlet blood poison said to spread blood poison for 1,000 li? Why was it trapped in someone's body and unable to spit it out? The taste of the scarlet blood poison's backlash should be pretty good. I think he's rolling his eyes in pleasure. Yo, he exploded and died. What a dazzling firework. Wang Wu lay on her back and laughed. Haha, why do I feel like you're full of resentment? Did he offend you? Wang Lu said. It's not that I offended him. At that time, I kindly came forward to persuade him not to be fooled by a fool and stand out at this time. As a result, he immediately turned hostile, saying that he was a child and so on. In the city of immortals, there are not many people who dare to be so rude to me. Wang Wu said with interest, there's actually such a thing? Then how did you deal with it? Humph. Senior Scarlet Blood Poison has been living in seclusion for decades. After this grand competition was widely publicized in 9 regions, he came out to participate in the competition as one of the candidates. To say that he has a lack of IQ is certainly true, but behind him, there must be a lot of villains who want to eat human blood. In this battle, people with discerning eyes can see that the withered soul immortal on Dishian's side is extremely powerful and ruthless. If there's no certainty of victory, it's best to just give up. If you insist on fighting, it's basically a dead end. How could Senior Scarlet Blood Poison have the courage to come out? Moreover, even I can't dissuade him? Wang Wu said with a smile. Naturally, someone bullied that old thing for being in seclusion for too long. They accused you and me, and even the entire Wanxian League of only looking after their own interests and suppressing the people. Then they bragged about his strength and made him forget himself, thinking that he could become famous in one fight. Little did they know that they don't want him to become famous, they want him to die on the spot. Wang Lu nodded. That's what happened. His death is too much of a contrast with the previous propaganda, which could easily cause the crowd to be agitated. At that time, as long as the crowd's emotions are guided, they can burn the fire on us, the organizers. For example, the preparation is not good, the quality of the medicine provided is not good, or they simply accuse us of being half-hearted and colluding with Dixian, causing these capable people to die in the competition with resentment. You seem to be very familiar with this. It's just a trick of making use of a pretext. I've seen it many times. I've also seen Wanxian League. Please slow down and wait for your people, your conscience. Before. Compared to that, this is just child's play. Wang Lu said lightly. Moreover, we've received many similar complaints in the past 2 days. Haha, how did you deal with it? I've directly transferred the complaints to Little Hai to deal with. I don't know if he has contacted the waste paper disposal agency. Wang Lu curled his lips, showing the style of a bureaucrat. What are you going to do about those people who are fanning the flames? Publicly refute the rumors? Wang Lu said, that's a bad plan. Why waste your breath to deal with a group of flies and dogs? Just crush them directly. Find someone to arrest them all, and then casually collect the evidence of their crimes and publish it. Anyway, they won't have a chance to talk back. Whatever we say, the public can only believe it. Well done. Remember to leave a copy for me when you confiscate the house. But I'm afraid it's not just small fries who are fanning the flames. There are also big fishes hidden among them. I know. The top management of the Wanxian League is not monolithic. There are many high-rank sects who want to take this opportunity to rise. That's why when I was provoked by Senior Red Blood Poison, I didn't knock out his front teeth on the spot. For these leaders of big sects, it's difficult to use the strategy of crushing them openly. When I communicated with Supreme He too, I tried to sound him out a few times, but he remained silent. It's clear that he doesn't agree with it. Wang Wu sat up and pondered. That old guy he too is afraid that as the biggest vested interest of the Wanxian League, his words and actions are of great importance, so it's inconvenient for him to express his opinion easily. Yes, he has his considerations, so I won't force him on this matter. During this time he has given me enough support. If I can't do something, wouldn't I be letting him down? Since I can't crush him openly, then I'll just crush him stealthily. At the same time, in a large hall in Immortal 7 area, a scholarly cultivator bowed his head in front of a desk and wrote at a great speed, "Mourning for Senior Red Blood Poison. Senior Poison is gifted. He has been trained by a high-rank sect since he was a child. He is skilled in spell casting and has a solid foundation. Although he is eccentric and frivolous, his foundation was abolished by his sect, and he has no hope of reaching deity stage in his life. However, after a fortuitous encounter and an ancient inheritance, his poison technique is earth-shattering. Even a Taoist master of deity stage would find it difficult to win against him. However, today in the battle with Dixian he was utterly defeated. He could not even display 10% of the power of his poison attack, which is unavoidably surprising. Witnessing the death of Senior Poison, people have to ask, why? Why did Senior Poison, who was supposed to win, die miserably on the field after a careful preparation for the Wanxian League? Why in recent months in the fighting arena, there have been countless deaths and injuries of loose cultivators and evil cultivators, but it's rare to hear the death of a disciple of a famous sect. Why is it that after the death of Senior Poison and the situation of the grand competition, the high-level officials of the Wanxian League are still unrepentant and unrepentant? An impassioned article was written by him in an instant. The scholar laughed and said, "Emotion, send this article to them. I want to see it everywhere in the City of Immortals tomorrow morning." The maid named Emotion beside him chuckled and took the article that had just started to dry. Her beautiful eyes wandered as she praised, "Master's article is getting better and better. As soon as this article comes out, I'm afraid everyone in the Wanxian League would want to beat them up." Upon hearing this, the scholar laughed and said, "This has nothing to do with my article. It's purely their own fault. Since the preparation of this grand competition, everything has been done by them. Moreover, their attitude is arrogant and selfish. I can see that several of their super sects have gotten this and that kind of benefit, but how much of it does my heavenly book building get? Those elixirs are fine, but since they said that they should unite as one, why did my heavenly book building apply for knowledge sharing from the 10,000 Arts sect? But they made all sorts of excuses. My article today is just a voice for the millions and millions of people who have suffered from it. Alright, time is of the essence. Emotion, quickly send the article, no delay." The woman chuckled and nodded, then turned around and left. It was just that when she turned around her smile was a bit stiff. Master said it with awe-inspiring righteousness, but, as a person around him, how could she not know the truth? That article was indeed wonderful. The wonderful thing was that it was evasive at the key points, throwing ideas into people's minds and inciting people's hearts. For example, it said that his foundation was destroyed by his sect, and he had no hope of reaching deity stage in his life. It sounded like the Senior Poison had a promising future, and should be expected to reach deity stage. In fact, with his spirit root qualification, peak Yuanying stage was his upper limit. Secondly, it said that he had a fortuitous encounter with an ancient inheritance. That was true. Unfortunately, it was the inheritance of a small sect from 20,000 years ago, and the quality was not necessarily better than that of today's people. It was difficult to say that a deity stage could win. Low-level deity stage was indeed so. Almost invincible in the same stage. Peak Yuanying stage was naturally almost invincible in Yuanying stage. As for the last paragraph, it was even more heart-wrenching. Why did they die on the spot after the preparation of the Wanxian League? Why did people from the righteous sects die so rarely? Because they had long warned the loose cultivators not to throw away their lives, and it was you who instigated them to appear. However, all of this was for the benefit of the heavenly book building. If this morning article was sent out, the high-pressure posture of the Wanxian League would inevitably loosen, and in order to quell public anger, they would have to make an explanation. At that time, the long-prepared heavenly book building would have a great opportunity. However, when the enemy was right in front of them, they still had to fight endlessly. Was this really good? With such doubts, Emotion walked out of the hall. However, just as she arrived at the door, she saw a person standing outside. A blonde girl with blue eyes and bright beauty. Chapter 647. Mur? When Emotion saw this beautiful girl, she was taken aback. She came from the heavenly book building and had followed her master for many years, so she could be considered as knowledgeable. Thus, she recognized that the blonde girl was from the Western continent. In fact, in the context of the grand competition, there were indeed a few Western continent people who came to the City of Immortals to do business. However, a Western continent person with such a special temperament was unprecedented. The girl was not tall. Among the Western continent people, she was somewhat petite. However, her posture was straight and dignified, especially her pair of deep eyes, which were awe-inspiring and awe-inspiring. After opening the door, Emosyang subconsciously took a few steps back. Then she realized that as the maid of the master of the Heavenly Book building, her words and deeds were related to the dignity of the master. Thus she stood up straight and stabilized her mind. However, the Western continent woman was gentle and polite. Seeing that the other party was startled by her imposing manner, she restrained a bit of her sharpness and her eyes became soft and warm, which finally made Emosyang feel relieved. It seemed that this Western continent woman did not have the slightest evil intention. However, the next moment, as soon as the Western continent woman spoke, Emosyang felt a chill all over her body and her complexion changed dramatically. I am Aya, entrusted by someone to fight with your master. Aya, she was actually the Night King of Western continent. Aya's story was actually rarely circulated in 9 regions. Many people had never heard of her name at all. However, when the Wanxian League group went to the Western continent to look for the key to the Tomb of Immortals, they also brought back a lot of local customs of the Western continent. Among them was the story of the King of Bretonia. The Heavenly Book building collected books from all over the world, and the content was all-encompassing. Emosyang, who followed her master, had carefully studied the story of the Western continent. She knew that there was a young and petite girl in the Western continent. Her true identity was the legendary king who was blessed by the dragon race and had the powerful fighting power of the Holy One level. However, why would the legendary king of the Western continent come to her own door and fight with her master? Moreover, it was said that the Night King was a petite woman who looked like she was in her budding years. However, the person in front of him was about 16 or 17 years old. Her figure had just matured, and she was a young girl who was gradually losing her youth. What was going on? There were too many questions in Emosyang's heart, but as the maid of the master of the Heavenly Book building, her cultivation in the King Pill realm also allowed her to see that the strength of the girl in front of her was extremely strong. When they first met, the unsuppressed momentum was not much inferior to her master. She was at least a strong person above the deification realm, so she could not be neglected. But did she just say that she was entrusted by someone to challenge Master to a battle? Could it be that he had misheard? The Heavenly Book building had always had little to do with the Western continent people, so how could it attract the challenge of a Night King? Or could it be that the rumor that she was involved with Wang Lu was true? She's here for Wang Lu? Thinking that her master's article denouncing Wang Lu was still in her hand, Emosyang suddenly realized the other party's intention and realized that she must not be allowed to enter the hall. Emosyang was not worried that her master would lose. Although this hall was a residence in the Immortal 7 area and was built by an Earth Immortal, the inside of the hall had been built by the Heavenly Book building for several months and had long been impregnable. Unless it was the top supremes like Hichu, Kuchin, and Tianluan, no one could break this hall. What's more, the Immortal area was the core area of the City of Immortals, where the number of golden armored strongmen was the largest. The total number of golden armored strongmen in each area was probably more than 100. Once a supreme level battle broke out, they would immediately flock there. However, this kind of battle could not be fought at all. Once the battle started, it would inevitably attract the attention of many parties. And when all the powerful people in the City of Immortals gathered, it would be difficult to hide the secret of the Heavenly Book building. The master of the Heavenly Book building regarded himself as a strategist, but he never wanted to be on the front line. At least now was not the time. At least, this article was not published in the name of the master of the Heavenly Book building. As the maid of the master of the building, Emosyang's reaction time was above her cultivation base. Thus she said with an apologetic smile, "My master is not here." Aya shook her head when she heard this, with a hint of as expected smile on her face. The next moment, she opened her mouth softly. Her voice was clear, but it was deafening. "Ting Feng, you dare to stab your own people in the back during the grand competition. Yet you don't even have the courage to face everything head-on? Do people like you deserve to be the master of the heavenly book building? Do you also want to take the opportunity to lead the Wanxian League? Aya's tone was gentle, but her words became more and more fierce. Moreover, she spread her voice with the power of a supreme, which shocked the entire Immortal 7 area in an instant. The cultivators who lived here were all from high-rank sections. At this time they heard the news and talked about it. Thus, the gate of the Heavenly Book Building was soon opened, and the gentle voice of the master of the Heavenly Book Building, Supreme Tingfeng, came from it. I don't know who has deceived His Majesty the Night King, but he actually misunderstood my Heavenly Book Building. However, there are often misunderstandings in the world, so it's not surprising. However, His Majesty did not give the opportunity to resolve the misunderstanding with my Heavenly Book Building, but instead directly came to our door to declare war and even issued words of condemnation. I don't know what is the reason for this. Could it be that he wants to block the mouth of my Heavenly Book Building with the sharpness of his sword? Upon hearing this, Aya was startled. At this time the maid Mo Xiang, who stood at the door, quietly destroyed the letter in her hand with a spell, leaving no trace. She had heard what her master was going to do next, so she must not leave any evidence for the opponent. The master of Heavenly Book Building continued to say, His Majesty the Night King is not a person of my 9 regions. Whether it's the Wanxian League or the Grand Competition, they have no direct relationship with His Majesty. His Majesty's visit today also made it clear that he was entrusted by someone. If I'm not mistaken, the person who asked you should be Supreme Wang Lu, the chief planner of the organizing committee. Since he came to power, the high-level officials of the Wanxian League have always been reckless and unreasonable. Whoever is not pleasing to the eye, they would suppress them with groundless reasons. Today, I'm afraid that the Heavenly Book Building has also become a victim of this iron fist policy. I Tingfeng have always been loyal to the Wanxian League. For the Grand Competition I have racked my brains and never had any selfishness. But now I've been slandered as a backstabbing despicable villain, which is really chilling. After the words of the master of Heavenly Book Building, the surrounding cultivators also began to change their attitude and question the overbearing behavior of the Wanxian League. Most of the sects in Immortal 7 area were second or third rank sections. Their situation in this grand competition was already awkward. They had always regarded themselves as the decision-makers of high-rank sects in Wanxian League. However, in this grand competition, in order to enhance the efficiency of implementation, the Wanxian League constantly reduced the number of people who could speak. So far, in addition to the 5 uniques, only a few dozen sects could really participate in the decision-making. The rest, such as the Heavenly Book Building, were only qualified to attend and listen, but they had no right to vote and could not control their own destiny. This kind of contrast made most of them feel a knot in their hearts. At this time, when the master of Heavenly Book Building, Supreme Tingfeng, mentioned it, they seemed even more sad. Aya, on the other hand, sighed when she heard this. It was not different from what Wang Lu expected. She had a glib tongue, confusing right and wrong. In a few words, she shifted the focus of the contradiction, turning from guest to host. She was a first-class debater. To deal with such a person, it was really difficult to convict him unless there was a real handle on him. Moreover, the master of Heavenly Book Building was careful in his work, so how could it be easy to catch a handle on him? He hid behind the scenes and incited others to charge ahead. When he stood up to speak and was caught, perhaps the situation of public opinion would have long been eroded, and the outcome would have already been decided. Was that why he asked me to deal with it? However, this was indeed a very accurate judgment. I'm the best at dealing with this kind of glib-tongued villain. Aya was not good at sophistry, nor did she like to have a pointless argument with others. For people like the master of Heavenly Book Building, she always had only one way to deal with them, the sword in her hand. The next moment, no less than 100 cultivators in Immortal 7 area were shocked to see this scene. The blonde girl with blue eyes took a step forward with a determined face. The person moved forward, the sword moved forward. The golden sword light was like a tide, cutting the sea and the sky. The whole audience was shocked. She actually made her move? This people often say that if you don't agree, you'll draw your sword. She didn't even say anything, Yet she directly made her move? She actually dared to openly make her move in Immortal 7 area? Isn't she afraid of the pure gold warrior? What a powerful sword intent. Even a supreme-level sword cultivator is nothing more than this. This Western continent woman is so strong. No wonder she's not afraid of the pure gold warrior. Just as the people's exclamations were incessant, the main hall of Heavenly Book building in Immortal 7 area had completely melted in the sea of light. In the light, the magnificent hall, as well as the mechanism arrangement of Heavenly Book building for several months, all melted and dissipated, as if they no longer existed. A moment later, there was only a lonely figure standing in the sea of light, stunned. What's going on? Supreme Ting Feng, the master of Heavenly Book building, looked incredulously at the girl in front of him, as well as the brilliant golden sword light in her hand. She actually made her move? She actually made her move. After the shock, there was ecstasy. Supreme Ting Feng never thought that the other party would be so stupid. Under the watchful eyes of the public, she actually dared to make her move directly. Even Supreme he too couldn't be so rude and unreasonable. He was the master of Heavenly Book building, the leader of a second-grade sect in the Wanxian League, a supreme-level cultivation base, and a respected position. Although the Heavenly Book building was maintained as a second-grade sect because of his ancestor, and although his supreme-level cultivation base relied too much on external assistance, his actual strength was not as good as that of an ordinary peak deity stage cultivator. But after all, he was a supreme of the Wanxian League. At that time, he did not hesitate to destroy his own future and broke through to the unity stage by pulling up seedlings to help them grow, in order to enjoy the title of supreme as soon as possible. With this title, he could join the Heavenly Sage Hall and become a member of the highest authority of the Wanxian League. Even if he was a marginal member, he could still enjoy all kinds of inviolable privileges. However, Supreme Ting Feng's complacency did not last long, and he was horrified to find that he was disappearing. No, to be precise, something in his body was being forcibly taken out. This process was so rough that his consciousness was torn apart, and his immortal heart was shaken. Thousands of thoughts were stirring wildly in his mind, as if someone had forcibly inserted an iron rod into it, stirring everything into nothingness. As the master of Heavenly Book building, he was knowledgeable and soon found the answer in a remote area of his memory. The Sword of Judgment, this is the Sword of Judgment. It cuts off all the messy thoughts of a person and forcibly extracts the original consciousness. At that time, in the face of the original judgment, all crimes will have no place to hide. Because as long as a question is asked, the original consciousness will give the most honest answer. Because a person can't lie to his own original consciousness, no wonder she is not afraid of the pure gold strongman. This sword is not for destruction, it will not hurt the buildings in the Immortal 7 area at all, and it will not cause casualties, so the pure gold strongman will not be dispatched at all. But to make a supreme stand trial under the sword, it must be an immortal sword, and she can actually cut it. And after this sword, all my plans will have no place to hide. At that time my reputation will be ruined, and I will be doomed eternally. No, I must block this sword. I must not let things go to the worst, absolutely not. However, as soon as Supreme Ting Feng's consciousness of resistance was raised, an indescribable pain engulfed him, making him fall into darkness. Chapter 648. Immortal 7 area had a radius of dozens of miles, divided into upper, middle, and lower layers. There were 76 second and third rank sects stationed there, with more than 1,000 resident cultivators. Most of these thousands of cultivators now felt the tyrannical sword intent from the middle layer, and were deeply attracted by it. When they arrived at the middle layer, they saw the dazzling golden light. The sword light of the Western continent saint was powerful but not tyrannical. Bathing in it was like being washed by a cold spring, which made people's hair stand on end. What kind of sword is this? Sword was a weapon of murder. The more gorgeous and dazzling the sword light was, the more dangerous it was. However, what they saw in front of them was quite different from common sense. Soon, some cultivators could not help but be confused. Could it be a life-saving sword? There were killing swords and life-saving swords in the world. Although the proportion of people who practiced this sword was less than 1/10 of the total number of sword cultivators, there were indeed people who used this kind of weapon as a tool to cure and save people, cut off stubborn diseases, cut off aging. It was just that, although the sword light that spread from the center had no killing intent, it also lacked the generosity and affinity of a life-saving sword. You don't have to guess. This is neither a killing sword nor a life-saving sword. The top-ranked sects of the Wanxian League all had deep heritage and talented people. Therefore, the knowledgeable cultivators here were naturally not only Supreme Ting Feng. After witnessing Aya's golden sword light, some people also saw the origin of it. They saw an old monk sitting cross-legged in mid-air, and under him was a lotus seat blooming with extraordinary splendor. He was a master from the Zen school, who had achieved the golden Arhat body. He had a long lifespan, extensive knowledge, and was highly respected. Zen Master Beiku, do you recognize this sword? Zen Master Beiku said, "This is the sword of judgment. I can't believe that there are still people who can use this sword in this world." This poor monk thought that after the age of chaos, this sword had been lost for a long time. Huh? Sword of judgment? I'd like to hear the details. It's simple. The so-called sword of judgment can be regarded as the strengthening of the sword of truth. Everyone is familiar with the sword of truth, so this poor monk will not repeat it. The cultivators around him secretly nodded. The so-called sword of truth with one sword strike could distinguish whether there was guilt in people's heart or not. It was often used to distinguish lies and truth. However, the sword of truth also had many shortcomings. The most important point was that it relied too much on the subjective will of the sword user. For example, a certain person was clearly doing something wrong, but his heart was extremely selfish, and his three views were also extremely distorted. Therefore, he always firmly believed in his own way of doing things. Then, even if the sword of truth approached him, he would not be harmed. Moreover, after cultivating a clear and pure immortal heart, it was even easier to hypnotize oneself and strengthen one's willpower. Therefore, for many people with higher cultivation, it was very difficult for the sword of truth to have any effect. The sword of judgment can cut out a person's origin and put them naked under the sword for trial. At that time, no matter how many methods he used, whether it was to deceive himself or deceive others, it would all be useless. Because humans cannot lie to their own source. After the Zen master's explanation, someone quickly thought, "Isn't this similar to a soul-searching spell? Forcibly snatching someone's memories is very vicious." Monk Beiku said, "It's very different. After soul-searching, the person's soul would be destroyed and could no longer be restored. However, the sword of judgment only cuts out the origin in the sword light. After one sword strike, everything would be restored to its original state. Moreover, even if it's soul-searching, there's still the possibility of being deceived, distorting the soul, forging memories, and self-deception. All of these can interfere with the soul-searching. However, the sword of judgment can point directly to the origin, which can be called as mysterious and divine. However, if you want to cultivate this sword, in addition to the top attainments in the way of the sword, you also need to have an absolutely fair heart. When the judge wields the sword, he will also be put in the trial. First, he must pass the trial himself to ensure that this sword strike is not for his own benefit. Only then can he have the qualification to judge others. Otherwise, the backlash of the sword intent would be unspeakably miserable. So that's how it is. I heard that the Night King is famous for her fairness in the Western continent. It seems like the rumor is true. Then it's not inconceivable for her to cultivate this sword strike. Hey, if that's the case, doesn't that mean that Supreme Ting Feng clearly has a problem? Just now, the Night King accused him of stabbing his own people in the back during the grand competition. How do you explain that? Zen Master Sorrowbitter shook his head and said, "It's meaningless to guess blindly. The Night King's sword of judgment has come out, we just have to wait and see." While they were talking, the trial of the Night King had officially begun. When Supreme Ting Feng regained consciousness, he found himself standing naked in a sea of golden light. There was neither the main hall of Heavenly Book Building, nor the Immortal Seven area of the City of Immortals. In front of him, Aya stood on the top of a high mountain with her sword. Her eyes were disdainful, as if the sky was overlooking an ant. I ask you, do you know your crime? Supreme Ting Feng felt that his mind was clear, without any distracting thoughts. All his attention was attracted by Aya's question, and his mind subconsciously thought about it. Then, involuntarily, he gave an answer that he found hard to believe. Yes, I know my crime. Aya asked in a deep voice, what's your crime? Supreme Ting Feng replied somewhat mechanically, first of all, I created public opinion to kill Senior Red Blood Poison and several other loose cultivators. Using my own network, I published dozens of articles in XX and other publications, claiming that many loose cultivators in 9 regions were actually not weaker than the elites of the Wanxian League. The strength of those elites was just an illusion created by public opinion, and the loose cultivators lacked a real opportunity to show themselves. At the same time, I also sent people to spread comments around him, such as that the Wanxian League discouraged the loose cultivators from participating in the competition because they didn't want them to win and weaken their own authority. In order to stimulate the fighting spirit of Senior Red Blood Poison and other loose cultivators, so that they would volunteer to fight against Dixian on the stage and die on the spot. Did you know in advance that there would be such a result? I know very well that they are no match for Dixian. If they fight on the stage, they will definitely die. In fact, this is exactly my purpose. Because only when they die can I take this opportunity to attack the current management of the Wanxian League. Not long ago, I just wrote an article and gave it to my maid Mo Xiang to publish anonymously, but it has just been destroyed by her. Why did you attack the management of the Wanxian League? There are many reasons. The main reason is that I hope to use public opinion to build momentum so that I have a chance to rise. Secondly, I hate Wang Lu very much. He is too young and too talented. I am not willing to be instructed by him, so I hope to replace him. Do you know the consequences of doing this? I know that it is likely to lead to civil strife in the Wanxian League, and further defeat in the grand competition. But even if I lose, it would only be the failure of the Wanxian League in 9 regions. For me and the Heavenly Book building, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Do you have any accomplices? Yes, it is difficult for me to do this kind of thing with my own strength. Therefore, I also contacted the leaders or elders of Red Leaf Valley, Heavenly Thunder Temple, Flowing Cloud School, and other sects respectively. Aya's cold trial continued. At the same time, more and more cultivators in the Immortal 7 area had heard the news, and then listened to the appalling confession of Supreme Ting Feng. Is what he just said true? There is no lie under the sword of judgment. Moreover, the crimes he confessed are completely consistent, so it should be true. I was wondering why the atmosphere of public opinion during this time is so strange, as if someone is manipulating behind the scenes. I just didn't expect it to be Supreme Ting Feng. Are these people crazy? For their own selfish interests, they can even ignore the outcome of the entire grand competition. Alas, I heard that the Heavenly Book building and the 10,000 Arts sect have a grudge, but I never thought that Supreme Ting Feng would choose such an extreme way to deal with it. Red Leaf Valley, Heavenly Thunder Temple, and Flowing Cloud School are even more blinded by interest. As the crowd discussed, they gradually became agitated. During this period of time in the grand competition, the Wanxian League had more losses than wins. Thus, it was inevitable for everyone to suppress their anger. Now that Supreme Ting Feng's crime was exposed to the world, he soon became the target of public criticism. This person deserves to be cut into pieces. I think we should abolish his cultivation base and take out his primordial spirit and body to refine magical treasure. Alas, if he really got into trouble, it would be useless even if we skin him alive. Fortunately, Taoist Master Wang Lu has long been aware of this and let the Night King use the Sword of Judgment to find out the truth. Yes, if it weren't for the timely action of the Night King, I'm afraid we would all be deceived by him. When the time comes, it would lead to a bad result, and each of us would have to bear the blame. Just as the public opinion gradually turned to one side, Aya's trial finally came to an end. Supreme Ting Feng's crime was clear to the world, and his accomplices were also confessed one by one. Next, there was no need for the Sword of Judgment. The Wanxian League had its own means to deal with it. This operation of crushing the enemy was already a complete victory. Thus, I asked the last question. In addition to the above, what other crimes do you have? Supreme Ting Feng was silent for a moment, as if his original source was extremely resistant to saying this answer. However, under the sword of judgment there was no lie, and there was no concealment. During the period of alliance, I committed adultery with the Madam of Flowing Cloud School, the sixth elder of Red Leaf Valley, and others. At this moment, as the judge, Aya, who should be impartial and impartial, could not help but tremble the corner of her mouth. After Supreme Tingfeng said this, he simply threw away the broken jar. In fact, not only during this period of action in the past 100 years, I have committed adultery with more than 1,000 female cultivators. Most of them had their own fixed cultivation companion, but I liked this kind of married woman the most, and I enjoyed it as sweet as syrup. As if this was the only way to prove my identity and status. I have also made a move on handsome male cultivators, but soon because I got tired of playing tricks, I abandoned them. One of them, because he was hurt by love, died in a closed-door training. In addition, I also committed adultery. Enough. No need to say anymore. The trial ends here. Aya's cheeks were red, and she fiercely waved her hand to collect the sword light in the sky. Then she turned around and left, like a defeated general who had thrown away his helmet and armor. Sorry, this update is too late. Mainly because my phone is broken, and it took me a long time to repair it. Chapter 649. Hahaha, Aya, you're so cute. In Immortal 5 area, in the courtyard where the chief planner of the grand competition lived and worked, a burst of undisguised laughter broke out. Wang Lu sat in a pavilion, holding a teacup in his hand, but the tea in the cup continued to splash out because of the trembling of Wang Lu's laughter. More than half of the spirit tea, which was worth tens of thousands of gold coins, was wasted just like that. Next to Wang Lu, Taoist master of non-phase, who was leaning against the pillar of the pavilion, Wang Wu, could not help but laugh. So you just came back with your tail between your legs? Seriously, it's too shameful. I'm not running back with my legs between my legs. I just finished the trial and didn't want to waste more time. Aya angrily slapped the wooden table in the middle of the pavilion. Her long blonde hair seemed to stand up like a lion's mane. How could you finish the trial? Wang Lu mercilessly exposed Aya. Trial first and then sentence. You've only finished the trial, but you haven't sentenced him yet. At least there's no punishment. How could this be considered as completing the work? It's very different from your usual dedication to your duties. Aya was suddenly at a loss for words. Unjust. As a Western continent person, it's not convenient for me to intervene too much in your internal affairs. After finding out his crime, he should be handed over to the Wanxian League to deal with. Otherwise, I'm overstepping my authority. Aya, you're really quick-witted. You can even find such a high-sounding reason. But, as a knight, it's not good to deceive yourself like this, right? Wang Lu teased her with great interest and looked straight into Aya's increasingly embarrassed eyes, never tired of it. Aya only felt her face was hot and unprecedentedly embarrassed. Then she looked at Wang Lu's smiling face and gradually felt angry. Wang Lu, you're too much. It's you who asked me to help with the trial. How could you make fun of me now? And you never told me that the master of heavenly book building was so disgusting. If I knew it, I wouldn't have helped you. You're so bad. Sensing that Aya was a little angry out of humiliation, Wang Lu tactfully changed the topic. However, it was a tough trip. Let me treat you to a meal at the Keeping Immortal restaurant. Immortal Keeping Tower. Hearing this, Aya was startled, slightly lost in thought, and then her eyebrows raised. You want to use this kind of insignificant skill to bribe me? Wang Lu laughed. How can this be considered bribing? It's just a normal working meal. You helped me with something big, so what's wrong with me treating you to a working meal? I heard that Keeping Immortal restaurant has recently created new dishes, Immortal Chicken and Emperor Jar. They are all top-notch delicacies. Why don't we go and have a taste? Aya was startled again. Immortal Chicken, Emperor Jar. As for the celestial chicken, to put it simply, the ninth heaven mystic bird is chosen as the ingredient, and it is cooked for 3 years and 3 months using a secret method. The meat of the celestial bird is refined, and the taste is indescribable. The emperor jar is a thick soup made of 666 kinds of aquatic creatures from the endless sea, and 666 kinds of rare herbs from deep mountains and forests for 2 years. Just listening to this introduction makes people fascinated, but the specific recipe and taste can only be known after tasting it. It is said that not long ago, the famous glutton of the Wanxian League, Zen Master Big Belly, went to the Keeping Immortal restaurant to taste these 2 dishes and was moved to tears. Is it really that good? Aya was already quite lost in thought, her dark green eyes flashing with a star-like splendor. Of course it's good. A dish costs 200,000 spirit stones, and only the elders of high-rank sects have the qualification to reserve it, and you have to wait for at least 3 months. I am the chief planner of the organizing committee, so I can jump the queue. Aya was taken aback. A dish costs 200,000 spirit stones. That's too expensive. As the head chef of Misty Peak, Aya was dazzled by the price of this dish. The cost of operating the cafeteria for a year was only tens of thousands of spirit stones, most of which were used for food innovation, so the actual expenses were far less. Wang Lu waved his hand. It doesn't matter if it's expensive or not. In any case, it's reimbursed by public funds, not my own money. Don't forget, I am now a senior leader of the organizing committee. Aya frowned. That's not good, right? What's wrong with it? Wang Lu asked. Eating and drinking with public funds is a good tradition of our Wanxian League, even an unwritten rule. I just act in accordance with the rules. Aya, as the Night King, it's right for you to abide by the spirit of chivalry, but you should also know how to do as the Romans do and respect the local laws and regulations. But is there such a rule in the Wanxian League? Not long ago, you declared that during the grand competition, everyone should fully cherish and effectively use public resources, and not take the opportunity to be corrupt and waste. Wang Lu laughed and said, "That's for the people below to hear. What does it have to do with me? The rules and regulations do not apply to the senior leaders. This is the biggest rule of the Wanxian League. Moreover, as the chief planner, my contribution to the Wanxian League, let alone hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, even hundreds of millions of spirit stones are not that much. However, I have been doing this for so long. Have I ever received a piece of spirit stone from the Wanxian League? It's not even voluntary work. So these benefits can be regarded as compensation in disguise. But, no buts, otherwise the immortal chicken will be snapped up by the local tycoons." With that, Wang Lu got up and pulled Aya out of the door. Aya half-heartedly refused, but in the end, she still couldn't resist the temptation and went out. As for Wang Wu, she walked slowly at the back, wondering if Wang Lu could reimburse the meal. Could the Keeping Immortal building issue a few false receipts? In the private room on the top floor of the Keeping Immortal building, Aya was very satisfied. The table in front of her was a mess of cups and plates. Naturally, there were the famous immortal chicken and the emperor jar, as well as all kinds of other rare delicacies. Alas, I have been in 9 regions for so many years, but what I admire the most about you guys is the way of food. It really makes people obsessed and intoxicated. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu smiled and said, "If you like it, this will be our cafeteria in the future. Your strength is no less than a first-class supreme, and you're not a member of the Wanxian League. As a guest that can be made friends with, you should enjoy this kind of treatment." Aya shook her head. "No need. There are so many people coming and going here, and it's not good to be seen too much. Moreover, it's enough to taste this kind of delicious food once. Any more would be insatiable. Ha ha, you really know how to control yourself." While the two were talking about the way of food, Wang Lu's ears suddenly moved as he heard the conversation from downstairs. Alas, from now on, the master of the Heavenly Book building is completely discredited and beyond redemption. What a pity. Hearing that the topic was related to the master of the Heavenly Book building, Wang Lu took a sip of wine and focused his attention. The guests of the Heavenly Book building were from all walks of life, from supreme cultivators to ordinary mortals. However, through the voice just now, Wang Lu recognized that the speaker was a few King Pill and Yuanying stage cultivators, who could be regarded as the backbone of the City of Immortals. The master of the Heavenly Book building only has himself to blame. What's the pity? After all, he's a supreme-level cultivator. How many supremes are there in the entire 9 regions? 100, 200? What's more, the fall of the master of the heavenly book building has implicated many people. Because there are not many supremes, if such a person has bad intentions, the damage caused will be particularly serious. Imagine if he was bribed by Dixian and stabbed in the back at the critical moment, the consequences would be unimaginable. But the recent practice of the Wanxian League is indeed too overbearing, which inevitably leads to a backlash. We have no choice but to be overbearing. The strength gap between us and the enemy is so wide that we can't make a hasty move. We have to end the dispute quickly and integrate our strength so we can only lose. Humph, but after being overbearing, aren't we still losing more than winning? Since the start of the grand competition, there have been more than 100 matches. Can our Wanxian League win 10 matches? I'm afraid it's difficult to win 5 matches. Since Supreme He 2 and Taoist Master Nanfei's won in a row, we have been retreating in defeat. The master of the heavenly book building questioned the Wanxian League, which is not without foundation. Old Su, you've drunk too much. How could you say this kind of thing? Didn't the high-level leaders of the Wanxian League say it several times? Right now we have to avoid the sharp edge and accumulate strength. Accumulate my ass. Isn't it because we can't win so we make excuses for ourselves? As soon as his voice fell, he heard someone shout downstairs, "Shut your mother's fart. I, your father, am eating a meal while listening to your demonic words. Could it be that you are on the same side as the master of the heavenly book building? Let me get rid of you on behalf of heaven." Then came the sound of spells being released and magical weapons clashing. The two sides fought fiercely. However, after a while, 4 golden armored men appeared and suppressed the riot. Phew, sure enough, the morale is unstable now. Even if we beat a group of people who fish in troubled waters, it's inevitable that the morale will continue to decline. Even the diners in the restaurant have begun to doubt the future. Then the future is really not good. Wang Lu fiddled with the delicate wine glass in his hand and gradually frowned. Wang Wu said, "Isn't that nonsense? After losing for a month in a row, it's inevitable for anyone to be impatient. What's more, there are a lot of key matches in this month. You let the main force avoid the fight. To put it nicely, it can be interpreted as temporarily avoiding the sharp edge. To put it bluntly, people will inevitably suspect that you have no chance of winning at all." Aya also said, "Even if we have to temporarily avoid the sharp edge in the early stage, we need some means to stimulate the morale at the right time so that people can see hope in failure. I suggest you choose a few key matches as soon as possible to win so that people can be reassured." Wang Lu smiled and said, "I want to, but the cards in my hand are limited. How do you want me to play cards? Do you think I was willing to give up every one of the more than 100 matches before? There were at least 3 matches that I intended to win. At that time I sent a few dark horses, but the result was still crushed." Aya was startled when she heard this. So miserable? The strength gap is still too big. Especially in this month, those Dixian people can be said to be crazy. Even the men in black have personally made their move twice, not giving us a chance at all. The King Pill Yuaning stage contestants who are currently in urgent special training are indeed making fast progress, but I think in the current situation the odds of winning are 50-50 at most. But if even our main force only has a 50% chance of winning, then this grand competition would not be fun anymore. Wang Wu asked, "Do you need me to go on the stage?" "No need. You're the most stable trump card in my hand. It's too wasteful to use it now. Even a small trump card like me can't easily go on the stage," Wang Lu said while lost in thought. "No, now it's time for me to come forward. After being behind the scenes for a long time, it's time for me to come forward. But the timing must be properly grasped. My position now has an extraordinary symbolic significance. Not only do I have to win a big victory. Not only that, but it's best to accumulate a series of small victories and become a big victory that can reverse the decline in one fell swoop. It's not expensive, but I need to win a few matches first as a cushion. But now, who can win steadily?" While thinking, Wang Lu's eyes subconsciously wandered around. Looking at the mess in front of him, he suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Chapter 650. The news that Supreme Tingfeng, the master of heavenly book building, was cut out by the Night King of Western Continent with the Sword of Judgment in Immortal 7 area, and his crime was soon spread throughout the city of immortals. For these speculators who had completely lost their bottom line, people naturally despised them. Wang Lu also took this opportunity to further strengthen his control of public opinion. He blamed the master of heavenly book building and the others for the consecutive defeats in the first month. If these people didn't secretly make their move, the Union of 10,000 Immortals would have just avoided the sharp edge and kept a low profile, and would not have been completely reduced to being beaten up. During this period, the many crimes of Supreme Tingfeng and his gang were constantly exposed, including designing traps for those loose cultivators, and even openly poisoning them so that they had a high chance of winning, but in the end, they died tragically on the battlefield. Most of the 1-month losing streak was caused by these people. If this propaganda argument was seriously examined, it would naturally be untenable. The strength of those loose cultivators could be seen at a glance. Let alone holding them back, even if all the resources of the Wanxian League were assembled to carefully arm them, they would still be unable to escape death. At most, they could retain 1 or 2 points of dignity when they died. However, when the overall situation was absolutely unfavorable, they could only rely on this propaganda strategy to stabilize people's hearts as soon as possible. If people's hearts were unstable, it would be difficult for the Wanxian League, this huge and sophisticated organization, to exert its full strength. Especially for the large number of low-level cultivators, they were the most vulnerable, but their role was irreplaceable. For example, when Wang Lu developed the Wisdom Sect, he used the power of a large number of ordinary people to collect basic resources. Under the rule of the Wanxian League, thousands of foundation establishment and shoot-on stage cultivators could also play a great role. Among other things, the female cultivators who gathered in B9 area these days had greatly eased the entertainment problem of the cultivators who were struggling in the front line. If these low-level cultivators lost confidence in the grand competition, the situation faced by the Wanxian League would only be worse. Therefore, even if he used deceptive means, Wang Lu insisted on carrying out the propaganda strategy to the end. Of course, with the passage of time, no one would become blind. Therefore, a few inspirational victories were imminent. Although I'm really sorry to bother you, I don't have too many suitable candidates except you. Aya smiled when she heard this. With our friendship, why do you say such polite words? As long as you need me, I can be your sword at any time. As expected of the righteous Night King. As Wang Lu spoke, he sighed deeply. Then I'll have to trouble you this time. The battle will be difficult, so don't force yourself. However, Aya slightly raised her eyebrows. If it's not difficult, then there's no reason for me to make a move. Don't worry, although Dixian is powerful, I still have a chance of winning. If I go all out, I have a 50% chance of winning against a Dixian like Xian Mo. Wang Lu was simply amazed by Aya. Xian Mo was indeed not the most powerful person in Dixian, but even the number 1 person in 9 regions, Supreme He too, didn't dare to say that he had a 50% chance of winning against her. The previous victory was purely because the opponent surrendered to him. This Aya really has a big tone. However, considering her consistent unwillingness to admit defeat and revolutionary optimism, it was not that Wang Lu couldn't understand her confidence. It was just that, if he really believed it and sent her to fight against a group of murderous Dixian, Wang Lu really couldn't do such a thing. However, if he directly refused Aya's kindness, it was easy to be misunderstood as looking down on her, which would then cause more trouble. Therefore, Wang Lu just patted her on the shoulder. When the time comes, I'll have to trouble you. Aya confidently puffed out her chest. Don't worry. Given that the Wanxian League was extremely eager for a victory in adversity, Wang Lu didn't let Aya wait too long. One day later, the battle to win began. Wang Lu took Aya all the way from Immortal 5 area to an arena in Human 3 area. According to the ranking of Immortal, Human, and Human, the Human area was not ranked high. Moreover, the standard of the arena was far less than that of the central arena in Immortal 1 area. Let alone the expansion of the space, it had a radius of thousands of miles. It was simply a spacious restaurant. She and Wang Lu stood in the hall of the restaurant. There were only 2 round tables in the large hall, surrounded by rows of bustling kitchens, and the aroma of the dishes assailed their nostrils. Aya was very confused. Wang Lu, are you sure we're not in the wrong place? Why do I feel that this place is not like a fighting arena? Aya said and then looked around. In the kitchens around the hall, there were no less than 200 chefs and several times more helpers. The kitchens were crowded. Some of them were cooking and some were stewing. The dishes they cooked were different, but they were equally focused and serious. However, these chefs were only at the level of ordinary people. In the context of the grand competition, they were as fragile as ants. Could it be that the difficulty this time is how to deal with the opponent without accidentally injuring the other party? Does it require very precise power control? Aya showed a slight embarrassment. But very well, in any case, I will try my best. Wang Lu patted her on the shoulder and said, "You misunderstood. The reason why this place is not like a fighting arena is that it is not a place for fighting. This is a restaurant, and there is only one purpose for coming here." With that, Wang Lu clapped his hands. Immediately, from the left side of the kitchen, several chefs dressed in white brought out a variety of delicious dishes, which filled the table. Oh, this! Aya's eyes flashed involuntarily. Emerald starfish, grouper flower carved bamboo, and crystal rice? These dishes were no less delicious than the immortal chicken and the emperor jar. Are these for me? Aya was lost in thought for a moment, and then shook her head vigorously. No, now is not the time to indulge in food. Although I am very grateful for your hospitality, I need to concentrate on dealing with the strong enemy before the big battle, so I can't be distracted by these pleasures. So, Aya swallowed with difficulty, and then subconsciously reached out to the table and whispered, "It shouldn't be a problem if I just eat a snack. No, I am a knight who is about to enter the battlefield, so I have to." But some people say that proper nutrition before the battle is more conducive to victory. Seeing that Aya's inner struggle was almost about to split into two, Wang Lu, while holding back his laughter, reached out to pick up a wine immortal bag on the table, stuffed it directly into Aya's mouth, and then said in Aya's somewhat ashamed and angry eyes, "You can eat it boldly. This time, I invited you here to trouble you to eat to your heart's content." At the same time, in the hall of the restaurant, a figure appeared out of thin air in front of another round table. It was an extremely fat and burly man, more than 8 feet tall and almost the same width. This person's figure and appearance were very strange. His 2 legs were almost completely sunk into the fat that fell from his upper body. However, his 2 arms were slender and strong, and his muscles were knotted. His shoulders were wide, and his arms hung down naturally, almost touching the ground. Compared to a human, he was more like a gorilla. And his face was also impressive. He had mung bean-sized eyes, a red nose, and a big mouth that spanned the whole face from left to right. He looked 10% like a human and 90% like a ghost. After seeing this person, Wang Lu immediately cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, Food Immortal." The man named Food Immortal grinned and said, "You're too polite. This time, your Wanxian League has collected hundreds of ace chefs from 9 regions, which allowed this old man to have a feast. I should thank you first. However, is this the opponent you found for me? It's actually a Western continent girl? Hehe, the Western continent does have all kinds of magical and mysterious places, which are not inferior to 9 regions. However, when it comes to food culture, it's not even worthy to carry our shoes." You found a Western continent person. Do you want to give up and admit defeat? Wang Lu shook his head and said, "If I give up and admit defeat, there's no need for me to come out in person. I came here to win." Hehe, your tone is not small, but I don't know about your ability. With that, the Food Immortal narrowed his small eyes and carefully looked at Aya. Well, it looks like you're very strong. If we compete in fighting and killing, I'm afraid this old man will be scared witless. However, if we compete in eating, this old man has never lost. Hearing this, no matter how slow Aya was, she found the problem. Wait a minute, Wang Lu, do you want me to compete with him in eating? Wang Lu spread out his hands and said, "Didn't I give you a set of competition schedule before? In the cultural competition, there is also a food competition." Aya was immediately annoyed and said, "This is ridiculous." Before Aya could finish, Wang Lu had pressed her arm hard and said, "Aya, I'm not trying to make fun of you. When it comes to the grand competition, no one can afford to make fun of you. I believe in your strength, that's why I brought you here. But I'm a knight with a sword, so I should be on the battlefield, Wang Lu sternly said. This is also a battlefield. No one will treat it as a child's play. And your opponent is a strong enemy worthy of you going all out. The food immortal is a Dixian who entered the Tao through food. Apart from you, I can't think of anyone who can compete with him in food. Please, I can't do without you here. Aya was silent for a moment and then nodded. Very well, since you say so. Then I'll compete. However, if the opponent is really that strong, I'm afraid. Aya was embarrassed to compete with people in a strange place outside the battlefield. Wang Lu reached out and hugged her, patted the girl's still delicate back and said, I have absolute confidence in you. Aya's face was slightly red. She pushed Wang Lu away and then immediately restrained her expression. She sat in front of the round table and looked at the opposite food immortal. The girl had entered the state of the competition. Oh, that's a good momentum. The food immortal smiled indifferently and then asked Wang Lu, Can the competition start? Wang Lu nodded and said, Let me introduce the rules of the competition first. This competition is the Great Gourmet Challenge, which is the quality of the two sides as gourmets. In a while, the chefs around you will serve you with food from all over the world for you to taste. These chefs are peerless chefs from all over 9 regions, and their cooking skills are beyond doubt. However, according to the requirements of the competition, there will be some flaws in every dish they make. Your task is to find out these flaws. Every time you find a flaw in a dish, you can get 1 point. If you choose less, you will get no points. If you choose wrong, you will lose 1 point. The first to accumulate 500 points wins. With that, Wang Lu looked at the food immortal and said, Of course, due to the particularity of the competition, you can first confirm the chefs. However, the food immortal shook his head and said, I've already confirmed that they all work independently and have not colluded with you. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Well, since there's no other gossip to say, I'm going to eat. With that, he reached out and grabbed a piece of fat meat and put it into his mouth. Ha ha ha, it's delicious. It's a pity that the heat is a bit off. This should be because the chef deliberately cooked it a bit longer, right? Wang Lu smiled slightly and said, Food immortal, you get 1 point first. After lying in bed for 2 days, I finally came back to my senses. I'll update this chapter first and then make it up on the weekend. By the way, it seems that there are still many people who don't know that the traditional Chinese version of Spirit Sword Mountain has been published. Friends in Taiwan can buy it in major bookstores. Not to mention, at least the cover quality is very good. Each episode also has an extra foreign story, which can be regarded as a good deal. Those who are interested might as well join us. Chapter 651. How are we going to compete? It had only been a cup of tea's time since the start of the gourmet challenge, but Aya was already in chaos. She had never heard of this kind of competition. Finding the flaws deliberately left by the chefs in the dishes and accumulating the correct answer 500 times could win. The rules were not difficult to understand. What was difficult to understand was, what role could she play in this kind of competition? When it came to food tasting, she was also very experienced. After so many years in 9 regions, out of interest and hobby, she had tasted countless delicacies. To say that she was a food expert was indeed worthy of her name. However, the opponent was the food immortal. In just a cup of tea's time, the other party had gotten 8 points in succession. Most of the dishes could be tasted with just a touch of the tongue, and it was so accurate that it was unbelievable. Well, the shiitake mushrooms have been soaked for less time. Although it doesn't affect the taste, it's still a flaw. In addition, the water quality of the soup is also a bit heavy. It should be deliberately mixed with well water, right? It's not much, just 1 spoonful. Wang Lu nodded his head and said, Food immortal, 1 more point. Hearing Wang Lu's report, Aya was even more at a loss. How could such a flaw be picked out? He was indeed the ancient food immortal. If it were her, Aya looked down at the fried pork on the plate. She had already eaten 1/3 of the dish, but she still couldn't judge where the flaw was. The taste seemed to be a bit heavy, and the meat was a bit overcooked. However, Aya didn't dare to say that this was the flaw. because this was already the best piece of fried pork she had ever eaten. It was better than any experience she had ever had in 9 regions. According to a rough standard, it could be called flawless, so where could she find another one? While hesitating, the food immortal had completed the 10th appraisal. After reporting the flaw, the food immortal turned his head to look at Aya and then asked, "Are you sure you want to choose her as my opponent? She doesn't even know how to taste food. At most, she can only be called a diner. Compared with this waste, this old man's appetite will be gone." Then, ignoring Aya, whose cheeks were flushed with anger, the food immortal said to Wang Lu, "I think it's better for you to compete with me in person." Wang Lu smiled and said, "Me?" The food immortal stretched out his greasy finger and pointed to Wang Lu. "I heard that you are an all-round talent, and you have good attainments in any field. Moreover, in the past month we have won many battles. As the chief planner of the Wanxian League, you have been silent all this time. Today you suddenly appeared. You must be planning to win the next match to reverse the unfavorable situation of the Wanxian League. In this battle you can only win and not lose, so you should have the confidence to win. And this confidence can't be her, right?" After saying that, he took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "Moreover, how can you let a beautiful girl embarrass herself on the field while you watch from the sidelines?" When Wang Lu heard this, he couldn't help but sigh. "Senior food immortal, it seems that your big mouth is not only good at eating, but also good at sowing discord. That's right, if it's possible, I would also like to personally participate in the duel. Rather than placing my hopes on someone else, I might as well place my hopes on myself. And I have indeed put in a lot of effort into evaluating delicacies. Unfortunately, it is because of this effort that I know that it is impossible for me to compete with a master in this field. Food tasting requires talent, a love from the soul for food, not a simple sense of taste and smell. If it is a competition of theoretical knowledge after special training, I am confident that I can compete with anyone, but what is the use of pure theory? A real master can surpass me with intuition. Not to mention that there is a peerless master who uses the dining table as a battlefield and is invincible." The food immortal just chuckled. Wang Lu's unwillingness to accept the challenge was expected. Just now he invited Wang Lu to participate in the duel, just to shake Aya's confidence. However, soon the food immortal frowned, because Aya, who was sitting on the opposite table, suddenly showed a look of realization, and then said, "This meat has a little more salt," and deliberately chose the wrong pig breed, resulting in a slight deviation in the meat quality. Wang Lu nodded. "Aya gets 1 point." At this time, the food immortal suddenly came to his senses and immediately scolded himself for being muddle-headed. Why did he go and provoke Wang Lu? Just now, Wang Lu's words sounded like he was excusing himself for not participating in the duel, but in fact, he was giving Aya some pointers, telling her the correct way to taste delicacies. Although he didn't know why they didn't prepare before the duel, but once the duel started, Wang Lu could not interfere with the duel for any reason, so it was naturally forbidden to remind her. However, just now, he took the initiative to talk to him, so he immediately took the opportunity to tell Aya the key to the duel. However, that Western continent girl really had some skills. It could be seen that she actually had no experience in tasting, and her interest in food was limited to a hobby. Whether it was her knowledge or her means, they were very immature. But it was not easy to point out the defect of the fried pork in one sentence. Adding too much salt was actually a cover. The real difficulty was the meat quality appraisal. The extra salt just covered up part of the meat flavor, making it difficult to judge that the chef actually chose another kind of pork. It could be said that this was a trap carefully designed by the chef. Even he, the food immortal, smelled the taste through his sense of smell, and then used his immortal technique to restore all the taste of the dish. It took him a long time to restore the details. For a common gourmet, this was already an extremely difficult challenge. But for Aya to successfully break through the difficulty, was it because she was talented? Or, after a moment of astonishment, Aya had consecutively answered the flaws of the 2 dishes, both of which were correct. So fast. After Wang Lu's pointers, Aya seemed to have awakened. In an incomprehensible way, she quickly completed the tasting of all kinds of delicacies. Her speed was no different than that of the food immortal, And her accuracy was no different than that of the food immortal. Any food only needed to be touched on the tongue, and the good and bad would be clearly distinguished. The food immortal took a glance and was immediately dumbfounded, because this was simply not reasonable. She did touch it with her tongue, but the place where she touched it was completely wrong. For example, just now, she took the flaming turtle heart. The essence of the taste was at the tip of the heart. As long as one tasted the heart, one could have a comprehensive understanding of the whole dish. But Aya was tasting it in the opposite direction. Then she also gave the correct answer. The heart of the flaming turtle heart, when seasoning it, she deliberately added a trivial seasoning. Someone cheated. This was the first reaction of the food immortal, because the scene in front of him was beyond his understanding. Of course, if it was him, let alone tasting it in the opposite direction, even if he didn't use his tongue, he could see the problem with his eyes. But he was the food immortal, what was Aya? However, in the end he did not accuse her of cheating because he was the food immortal, the food immortal. Not only was he the best food in the world, but his cultivation base was also earth-shattering. From the beginning to the end, he did not see where the two people cheated, and even if he wanted to accuse them, he could not. However, a moment later, a more outrageous scene appeared. In order to make up for the gap of nearly 10 points in the early stage, Aya began to speed up her tasting speed. She stretched out her chopsticks and picked up a fried eggplant box, and then shook it in front of her mouth. Before her tongue could even stick out, she threw the eggplant box to the side, and impatiently blurted out the answer. The oil is wrong. Wang Lu immediately nodded. Aya scores. The food immortal slammed the table and stood up. However, the moment he stood up, he suddenly discovered one thing. Aya's concentration was unusual. Although her movements just now seemed a bit hurried, from the beginning to the end, the girl's eyes were shining, her breathing was steady, and her posture was focused as if she was facing an opponent worthy of her all out. If this was cheating, then her acting was way too realistic. But the path of food ultimately required skill and experience. How could she rely solely on concentration? Unless, suddenly, the food immortal suddenly thought of a possibility. Could it be that she guessed it? A talented warrior could see the direction of the future from the chaotic environment in the battle, almost to the point of foresight. And Aya's posture at this time was indeed more like a warrior than a gourmet. So she could distinguish the quality of a dish without using her tongue? In theory it seemed to make sense, but was there really such a thing? And in the midst of his astonishment, the food immortal found that the gap between him and the other party was only 5 points. Forget it, now was not the time to pay attention to the other party. Since she had the ability to compete with him, the next step, he also needed to be a little more serious. After the food immortal became serious, his speed increased a bit, leaving Aya behind. Soon, in front of the food immortal, the first table of 30 dishes had been tasted. At this time, from a nearby kitchen, more than 10 chefs brought out 30 new dishes. The food immortal smoothly tasted the flaws of the first 15 dishes, but when it came to the 16th dish, the vinegar sliced fish, Wang Lu shook his head. Unfortunately, you can't score. The food immortal was surprised. Can't score? According to the rules, if there were multiple flaws in a dish, and not all of them were selected, then no points would be scored. In other words, he did not taste all the problems. Was it because after tasting more than 40 dishes in succession, his taste buds were a bit numb? Or the difficulty had already begun to increase imperceptibly? As a food immortal, the toughness of the Dishian's body was far from comparable to that of ordinary people. Even if the dishes were more stimulating, they could not numb his gourmet tongue. The only problem was that the difficulty had increased, and it was no longer possible to identify the flaws at will. So the food immortal immediately picked up a piece of fish and took a sip. Suddenly there were some other things in his heart. In terms of taste alone, he did not intend to change his answer, but in places other than taste, the chef who made this dish is gloomy and depressed, which contaminated the dish. Wang Lu laughed. You are indeed worthy of being called the food immortal, you are right. The wife of the vinegar sliced fish just died a few days ago. Unfortunately, this dish can no longer be scored. Please start to taste the next dish. The food immortal nodded and sighed in his heart. My goodness, this gourmet challenge is really interesting. The difficulty is getting higher and higher, gradually entering an unimaginable situation. After tasting more than 40 dishes, he was already asked to guess the mental health of the chef who made the dishes. If this continued when it came to the 400th dish, would it involve the 18 generations of the chef's ancestors? However, the more it was like this, the more interesting the competition was. The food immortal looked at Aya on the opposite table, and the fighting spirit in his heart began to burn. Chapter 652. This dish of overwhelming sadness rice. In the hall of the restaurant, the bulky food immortal was sitting on a heavy stone block. His slender arms could easily reach any corner of the dining table. When Tao Tai was eating, his arms could sweep horizontally and vertically like a long whip, and dozens of dishes were swept away in an instant. But now, his two thick arms were carefully holding a porcelain bowl, motionless. The food immortal had a dignified look on his face as he stared at the bowl in his hand. His mouth constantly muttered strange syllables, and his throat rolled as he swallowed his saliva. After a moment, he slowly opened his mouth. The mood of the chef of this overwhelming sadness rice is indeed depressed and tormented, and it is layered on top of one another, making it memorable, but there is a glimmer of hope in the despair. This should be the highest realm of overwhelming sadness rice. Even if the immortal cooks, it is not easy to reach this realm. But after tasting it for a long time, this glimmer of hope contains a deeper madness, so that the mood of the whole bowl of rice has completely surpassed overwhelming sadness rice. If there is any flaw, this is the only flaw. Such a great work should not be bound in an ordinary framework. Wang Lu was silent for a moment, and then nodded seriously. Senior Food Immortal is really amazing. Such a difficult situation was solved by you. I simply want to give you 2 points. The food immortal put down the bowl, but was not in a hurry to taste the next dish. At this time his points were close to 220 points ahead of Aya. Moreover, at this time the taste of the dishes had become more and more difficult, and the time to solve the problem was getting longer and longer, so he was not in a hurry. The level of the dishes was getting higher and higher. The so-called flaws must first have a perfect standard would exist. And the standard of the simpler dishes may be very high, but not so complicated. For example, a simple home-cooked dish should not be required to contain any deep and complex feelings. Perhaps there were brilliant chefs who could pour feelings into it, but that was just icing on the cake, not a necessary process. But if it was overwhelming sadness rice, if one could not understand the overwhelming sadness rice in the rice, then the rice could not be regarded as qualified. The same was true for deep as sea soup, 9 turns sorrow intestines, and so on. But to taste such dishes, more delicate effort was needed. In addition to the taste, one must also taste the feelings. The flaws in the dishes weren't so obvious. Instead, they were hidden well and craftily. In order to increase the difficulty of the competition, Wang Lu had also set up the order in which the dishes were served. Some dishes were almost flawless, while the dishes next to them were full of flaws. As many as 200 flaws were enough to make a dish difficult to swallow. But according to the rules, the food immortal had to endure the unhappiness and point out all the flaws one by one, constantly switching his taste buds between dishes of different styles and accurately grasping the essence of each dish. It really made him, a food immortal, feel heavy. Although he had gotten close to 200 points, there were already 3 questions that he had missed out on. Just now he almost couldn't find any flaws in the overwhelming sadness rice. I'm curious, how did this chef do it? Although the feelings it contains don't match the feeling of overwhelming sadness, it's still a rare delicacy. Being able to taste the flaws was certainly a skill, but the chef who could create such intricate flaws was also quite amazing. At least, the food immortal asked himself that if he didn't rely on his immortal cultivation base, he would never be able to pour such deep and complex feelings into a dish. But the chef who cooked that bowl of rice was just immortal. Wang Lu's eyes lit up when he heard this and smiled as if he had been looking forward to it for a long time. The unique emotion is, of course, based on his unique experience. I'll make a long story short. When he was young, he suffered a great misfortune, which led to the separation of his family, and his heart was like dead ashes. When he was middle-aged, His cooking skills had reached perfection, and he happened to meet a young girl with superb cooking skills. The two became husband and wife. His state of mind came back to life, but at this time, he found that his wife was his daughter who had been separated from him many years ago. Puff! The food immortal spurted out a mouthful of hot tea. No wonder in his bowl of rice, despair and hope are intertwined. But there is hope in the despair of his rice. Could it be that he wanted to hide his name with his wife from the world and not be found out? Wang Lu said, I also hope that things can go so smoothly, but unfortunately, after his wife learned the truth, she left a suicide note and disappeared from the world. The food immortal asked, so his only hope is to find his wife? But in his heart, he felt that this was not a good choice. Sure enough, Wang Lu sighed. He did find his wife who lived in seclusion, but his wife chose to commit suicide when they met. They shouldn't have met. This, for him, isn't this completely hopeless? No, because his wife left behind a daughter before she died, who was his flesh and blood. Although it was a distorted bloodline, she was born like a jade carving, which was his only hope. The food immortal was silent for a long time. During this period, Aya had pulled back 5 points, but he didn't make half a move. Wang Lu, you are ruthless. After listening to your story, I couldn't eat for a quarter of an hour. Wang Lu said with a smile, Senior, please don't make a mistake. That is not my story but the story of a poor person. I just dug it up and presented it. The food immortal sneered in his heart. Why didn't I see such a disgusting story appear on the opposite table? But on second thought, Aya only wanted to eat and never asked about the origin of the dish. She judged it based on her heaven-defying intuition. At this time, her heart was full of victory and defeat, and she didn't care so much about the story behind the food. But don't think that you can win like this. It's just an insignificant skill. Wang Lu smiled slightly. Insignificant skill? You misunderstood again. The insignificant skill is all in the back. In the front, we are having an upright competition. Unfortunately, it seems that I can't win against you. The food immortal coldly snorted. Upright? You have no shame. You, this guy, are really the same as what Xian Mo and the others said. Your lower limit is extraordinary. That Western continent woman analyzed the food as if it was an enemy. Although it was always successful in the competition, by the standards of a gourmet, it was simply a waste of God's gift. At least he was really tasting the wonderful food, but what about her? She didn't even touch the food on her tongue, so how could she taste it? As for the insignificant skill, if you have the ability, then use it. If he lost to anyone in food tasting, no matter what means the other party used, it would be the biggest joke in the world. Thinking of this, he carefully tasted dozens of dishes and accumulated 250 points. At this point, the competition was more than half over, and the difference between Aya and the food immortal had reached 30 points. Although Aya's intuition was sharp, it was not omnipotent. At this time, a considerable number of spectators had gathered outside the arena. Not only for the game itself but more importantly, this was the first time that Wang Lu appeared in public since the nearly 100 consecutive defeats in the Wanxian League. The significance of this game was undoubtedly the horn of counterattack. It was just that the contestant that Wang Lu bet on was not himself, but a Western continent woman who was still somewhat unfamiliar to many people. Many people in 9 regions were still unfamiliar with Aya's story, but after watching the first half of the game, many people were impressed by her. Although the score was still behind, it was already an extremely remarkable achievement to be able to follow closely behind the food immortal. Before the 100 consecutive defeats in the Wanxian League, almost all of them were one-sided crushing, whether it was civil or military. Dixian showed no mercy. Moreover, listening to Wang Lu's words, the situation would be more favorable in the second half? In other words, this game was really going to be won. But I think although that woman is powerful, there is still a gap between her and the food immortal. Although the gap is not big, the accumulation of 500 dishes, the final result is very impressive. Moreover, I can't see a turning point at all. Even such a tricky series of traps have been dealt with by the food immortal one by one. I can't imagine any problem that can trap him. While the crowd was talking about it, a new set of dishes was served on the food immortal's table. This time it was a little different from the previous one. The utensils were particularly exquisite, and the plate was also much more delicate. The food immortal's heart turned cold. He knew that the level of this food had been raised again. It had surpassed the general overwhelming sadness rice, and began to pursue the overall unity of color, fragrance, and emotion, which was also the highest realm of general food. At this point, the standard of food could be said to be infinitely high, and any slight deviation could be regarded as a flaw. Therefore, he, the food immortal, had to take it seriously. The next moment, he wiped his hands on the hem of his clothes, took out a pair of bamboo chopsticks from his sleeve, held them with his right hand, and gently picked up a piece of raw fish in front of him. This was the first time that he used tableware, and his solemn posture was evident. In order to taste the highest level of dishes, he also took out the highest level of posture. However, a moment later he frowned. Because there were no flaws no matter how he tasted, the fish in his mouth was perfect, and the plate was also impeccable. Could it be that this dish had no flaws? However, this did not match with the introduction of Wang Lu's question at the beginning. Or, in a table of imperfect dishes, being too perfect was a flaw? The food immortal began to hesitate. What he hesitated was not the judgment of a gourmet, but the necessary wisdom of a contestant. But at the same time, Aya did not hesitate to catch up with him. The difference in points went from 30 to 20, and then from 20 to 10, and finally she was going to keep pace with him. The food immortal finally couldn't bear it. He chose to believe in his judgment as a gourmet. This dish has no flaws. The next moment, he saw the smiling face of Wang Lu. Unfortunately, you answered wrong, so 1 point is deducted. This was the first time the food immortal made a mistake in the competition. It was not unexpected. The food immortal closed his eyes and asked, "What's wrong?" Wang Lu said, "There is a slight flaw in the plate decoration of this brocade dragon fish. Please pay attention to the poem on the plate." The food immortal took a look. On the exquisite plate, there was indeed a well-known 7-character quatrain, which was a famous poem that he, the Dixian, had read. "What's wrong with this poem?" Wang Lu smiled. "Please pay attention to the third word on the second line. It's a typo." Working overtime for the whole morning is really miserable. P.S. Please follow the WeChat official account, search for His Majesty the King, and there will be new activities from time to time. P.S.S. The traditional version of the novel has been published in Taiwan. Friends from the other side are welcome. On the mainland you can find Taobao to buy, the quality is reliable. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.